Hi, I'm Maria Contreras-Sweet, Administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration. At SBA, we're dedicated to helping small business owners and those who would like to be a small business owner start, grow, and succeed in their business ventures. Every large business started as a small company, and we've helped some of the most recognizable brands along their journey to success. FedEx, Apple, Under Armour, AOL, Ben & Jerry's, Dogfish Head, Stonyfield Farm, Tom's of Maine, Nike, JetBlue Airways, Chobani, just to name a few. For people throughout the United States and all our territories, SBA is here to help at any stage of your business, from writing a business plan to securing working capital to exporting your products overseas. SBA has district offices across the country. These offices help entrepreneurs with what we call 3 C's and a D: contracting, counseling, capital, and disaster assistance. Government contracting can be a critical tool for growing your small business. The government has many categories of contract opportunities set aside exclusively for small businesses. These help level the playing field for women, for veterans, and the socially and the economically disadvantaged. SBA also offers participation in matchmaking events and the Mentor-Protege program to help small businesses compete more successfully for federal government contracts. Through our district offices and extensive network of resource partners, SBA offers hands-on training, mentoring, and expert advice tailored to your needs. Our online learning center is also available around the clock, so you can explore, take training courses at your convenience. Many entrepreneurs need financial resources to start or expand a small business, and they must combine what they have with other sources of financing. While SBA doesn't loan money directly to small business owners, we can help facilitate a loan with a third-party lender, such as a bank or credit union, by guaranteeing that a certain portion of the loan will be repaid. SBA guaranteed loans can be used for various business needs, including replenishing seasonal inventory, building expansion or renovation, purchasing equipment, and working capital. Finally, when a natural disaster is declared, such as a flood, a wildfire, a hurricane, a tornado, or an earthquake, SBA is there to help business owners, homeowners, and renters pick up the pieces and get on their feet. We offer low-interest, long-term disaster assistance for loans for physical and economic damage caused by a declared disaster. So are you ready to start or grow your small business? Visit SBA.gov to learn more about how we can help and to find the location of your nearest SBA district office or resource partner. We're the U.S. Small Business Administration, your small business resource.
Are we happy in Kansas City today? Yes, we are. Hello, Kansas City and the world, and those of you who are live streaming in this morning. You are in the great city of Kansas City. And we are, yay, we're so happy to be here. And we're on a journey to become the most entrepreneurial city in the country. I'm Pat Brown, yeah, woohoo! I'm Pat Brown Dixon. I'm the regional administrator of the Small Business Administration in this region, in this 4-state region. And I am a little bit excited. So if anybody has like a fire extinguisher, I might need it. I'd like to introduce Rod Cox. He's the district director of the SBA Kansas City Metropolitan Area District Office. And I would like for all of you to stand, and Rod is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Thank you, Rod. This is National Small Business Week around the country, and I'm going to read to you the President's proclamation because then you won't have to hear me do too much talking. Ha ha. Small businesses represent an ideal at the heart of our nation's promise that with ingenuity and hard work, anyone can build a better life. They are also the lifeblood of our economy, employing half of our country's workforce and creating nearly 2 out of every 3 new American jobs. During National Small Business Week, we renew our commitment to helping these vital enterprises thrive. And this is from the President of the United States. From day one, my administration has been focused on cultivating an environment where small businesses can succeed. During my first term, we added 18 direct tax breaks for small businesses, including new tax credits for hiring unemployed workers and veterans and for investing in new equipment. Through the Small Business Administration, we have supported hundreds of thousands of loans, and to ensure small businesses have a voice in economic decisions, I elevated the Small Business Administrator to a cabinet-level position. There's more work to do in the years to come. We must protect tax credits that help small businesses hire, and because if we create a more level playing field, the best ideas will rise to the top, opportunity will flourish, and America will prosper. And you can read that proclamation online. I didn't read all of it, but this is, therefore, I, Barack Obama, President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority invested in me, do hereby proclaim May 12th through May 16th, 2014, as National Small Business Week. Yay! Okay, so we are in this wonderful, great facility based on the cooperation of Burns and McDonnell. And Greg Graves and his staff, Michelle Word, who is a supplier diversity manager, and Laurel Carlson have been working diligently with us. So let me tell you just a little bit about Greg Graves, because we just need to thank you extremely much for what you're doing for small business and for what you're doing for national small business, because Burns and McDonnell is not only a local sponsor, they are a national sponsor. So they are one of the, and a hometown national sponsor. Now, Greg Graves is the 6th CEO, President and CEO of Kansas City's employee-owned worldwide company, Burns and Mack. And over the last 105 years, he hasn't been here all that time, Burns and Mack has grown to 4,300 employees, and they offer full-service engineering, architectural, construction, environmental, and consulting in 30 locations across the world. Greg took the helm in 2004 when they had 1,500 employees and $420 million in annual revenue. Now they exceed $2 billion each year. They are the 18th largest engineering, architecture, and construction firm. They rank as Fortune magazine's, and this is one of the things that he's extremely proud of. It is ranked by Fortune magazine as 14th in the top 100 best places to work in America. So Greg didn't start at the top. He started and worked his way up, and he's the past chairman of the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. He's on numerous civic, educational, and company boards, and he was named CEO of the Year by Mid-America Minority Business Development Center and Difference Maker of the Year by the Urban League. So Greg Graves, we cannot thank you and Burns and Mac enough. Please come up and say, and welcome to everybody in the world. So appreciate it.
Thank you all, and welcome to Burns and McDonnell. I thought you were going to go on a little longer, but I guess that was as good as I.
Later.
Welcome to Burns and Mac. Let me make a couple introductions before we get started. My director of events, if you have any problems today, is Laurel Carlson. Laurel, raise your hand. If you don't like anything, talk to Laurel. If you're having a good time, talk to me. And if you think everything here is just fantastic, the director of our foundation is taking gifts. She'll be at the top. I'll bet no one in the room doesn't already know our supplier diversity advocate, Michelle Word, but Michelle, would you stand up anyway?
Yay!
Michelle. Somebody asked me the other day, what's the biggest impact Michelle Word's had on Burns and McDonnell? I said, ever since she came here, I started winning trophies. This gal makes things happen. And then I know there's a lot of small businesses in the room, and I know you'd probably like to meet our Vice President of Procurement, and that's Matt Ralston. Matt, would you stand up? Welcome, Matt. So I would only encourage everyone to make some hay today. There's never not a good time to make business. You're on the campus of the greatest small business that ever began in this city. You're in the campus of Ewing Kauffman. If it can't be done here, it can't be done anywhere. Burns McDonnell started as a small company too, right? Two guys from Stanford University who moved to Kansas City because they thought this town was a great place to start a business. And now it's quickly becoming America's most entrepreneurial city, which we're going to talk about here just in a few minutes. So thank you all for coming. I hope you have a great day. Welcome to Burns and Mac.
Thank you. Now, the Small Business Administration does a lot of research on small businesses, and so you hear lots of statistics, and those statistics come from the Office of Advocacy. And we have our regional advocate here today, Becky Greenwald. And if you have information or you have concerns about regulations for small businesses, see Becky. Now, in Kansas City, we have two major locations. We've got Kansas City, Missouri. We've got Kansas City, Kansas. And today we have mayors from both sides of the state line. And yay. And let me introduce them separately because I understand that when they get together, we'll be here all day. I'll tell you why. First, I'd like to introduce Mayor Sly James. He was elected on March 22nd of 2011, and he was born and raised here in Kansas City. And many of you have something in your programs, but for those of you online, Mayor James enjoyed a successful legal career for about 3 decades. A woman would never say that. He joined Blackwell, Sanders, Matheny, Weary, and Lombardi in 1983, and he was the first African-American partner in the firm's history in 1990. He is a former military police officer, and he served for 4 years in California, the Philippines, and Japan during the Vietnam War. He graduated cum laude, everything that he did. And this is what I like about him. He has a long passion for music, and I did not know that until a couple years ago. So someday we're going to have him sing to us. He was the lead singer in the Amelia Earhart Memorial Flying Band, and his band once opened for Jefferson Airplane in Kansas City. Mayor Sly James.
Well, Good morning, but before I start, and thank you all for having me here, on his way up, Greg gave me a little note, and he says, I'm too humble to say this, so would you say it for me? And he said, I was mentioned as the 6th president and CEO, but they didn't say I was the best or the, or the best looking or the best dressed or the most humble. So I wanted to make sure all of those good things got said about you, Greg.
Go on, Sly. Go on.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you know what? I do want to thank Greg and Burns and Mack for doing this. There are a number of truly magnificent corporate citizens in this city, and Burns and Mack is at the top of that list, along with some of the other folks that you'll hear from today. We're very grateful for their engagement in the city. I'm also very happy to be here with my good friend, Mark Holland. Seems that Mark and I will start the day together and end the day together, although both of us were kind of sitting there and saying, now what are we doing tonight? Okay. I'm excited that Kansas City's been selected by the U.S. Small Business Administration to be one of the host cities as part of the U.S. SBA National Small Business Week. Our small business owners take great pride in Kansas City, and it's an honor to have the SBA here to celebrate and recognize them during this week. I want to welcome Madam Administrator Maria Contreras-Sweet to Kansas City. I know she's not in the building now, but somebody hopefully will pass that on to her. She is a lady that we are very happy to have take notice of Kansas City and spend some time with us. While she's only recently taken that position, we're elated to have her in Kansas City to share her vision about small business administration and her goals with you today. Small businesses and entrepreneurs have been iconic to Kansas City for decades, and the legacy continues. We are proud to be the home of historic visionaries like Ewing Marion Kaufman, Henry and Richard Block, Joyce Hall, and others. I believe that cities can provide the best environment and conditions for small business owners and entrepreneurs, and Kansas City has been recognized around the country as being a city that is fertile for small business owners, startups, women business owners, etc. And we're very proud of that legacy. One of the reasons why the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce made Kansas City one of its initiatives in the Big 5 initiatives of being the most entrepreneurial city is because of our historic entrepreneurial basis and background. We see new businesses and small businesses as the job creators of the present and the future. Their success is vital to our economic vitality, and we're working on creating and sustaining those conditions that will allow them to thrive and grow. I want to thank you all for allowing me to be here with you today, and I hope that you have a tremendous conference, and we certainly look forward to each and every one of you from out of town, moving to town, and starting your businesses here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mayor. Appreciate it. Now for the other side of the state line, on Kansas City, Kansas, Mark Holland was elected April the 2nd, 2013 as the 28th mayor of the city of Kansas City, Kansas. And he is a third-generation United Methodist clergy. And that's why I said when you get the two of them together, we know how our ministers do. He's a wonderful minister, and he's really short. He doesn't speak very long. Am I right? And he is the pastor at Trinity Community Church, which is a United Methodist congregation in Kansas City, Kansas. He's a graduate of Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, and he had a Bachelor of Degree Science in anthropology. Okay. And a Bachelor of Arts degree in philosophy, that I understand. He is ordained in the United Methodist Church and received his Master of Divinity from Ellis School of Theology in Denver, Colorado. St. Paul's School of Theology is where he has his Doctor of Ministry degree since 2009. So, Mayor Holland. I'm so glad you got so much.
They said to keep it short because they know if I speak for more than 5 minutes, I'm going to take an offering. So I want to thank you for the invitation to come, and I want to thank you for coming here to Kansas City. It's always my pleasure to come across the state line to the other Kansas City. And so, Mayor James, I appreciate your hospitality here. We do have a great partnership in Kansas City and in the metropolitan area, because when people in the region and nationally and internationally look at Kansas City, they look at it as a larger region, an economic body that works together. And our role, though we're divided by the state line with about half the population on each side of the state line, with about more than 100 municipalities encompassing the metropolitan area, the need to work together has never been stronger, because if we're going to foster the kind of environment where businesses can be successful, it's going to be done because of our collaboration. And this kind of project that you're working on right now with the Small Business Administration is an opportunity to show how collaboration can happen across the public sector, the private sector, regionally with the federal government, the local government, and the state governments. All of us working together is how we're going to foster the new economy in our nation, and we're going to do it locally, because what starts locally is what has the opportunity to grow. There are a couple pieces that we're working on in Kansas City, Kansas for small businesses. One is to create that entrepreneurial milieu where companies can come and be successful, where there's a critical mass of startup companies. Startup Village, which actually straddles State Line Road, that both Kansas City, Kansas and Kansas City, Missouri are working on, is a tech startup area, where and that's largely been fueled by Google Fiber coming in. And the Google Fiber came in large part because of the work of Kansas City, Kansas and Kansas City, Missouri working together as a region to attract this company and then to leverage that new infrastructure to grow our businesses. I like to say, when we're growing businesses in Kansas City, Kansas, when we have a huge company that's looking around nationally at a place to stay, and they come into our community, we have the ability to roll out the red carpet. But one of the things we found in our city is when we have a small business come, we tend to roll out the red tape. And one of the things that we need to learn how to do is to roll out the same red carpet for the startup businesses and the small businesses that we do for the large companies. Because if we can, as a city and a municipality, thank you. If, as a city and a municipality, we can create an environment and reduce the barriers to allow small businesses to be successful and help them to focus on what they're good at, and navigating City Hall typically is not what a small business is good at. If we can help them navigate the barriers that we have, whatever they are in our communities, we have the opportunity to foster a community that can really grow and thrive. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be here in partnership with the other municipalities in the metro area, and to be here to partner with the local, the state, and the federal governments to see how we can grow our economy together. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, we're getting ready to start our panel, the most entrepreneurial city in the country. But I'd like to acknowledge anyone that is here from our congressional staff. Is there someone here from U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill's office? So please stand. Or from Senator Roy Blunt's office. Thank you so much for being here. Tom Salisbury. From U.S. Representative Sam Gray's office. And U.S. Representative Emmanuel Cleaver's office. Okay, and I know that we have someone here from Treasurer Zweifel's office, the State Treasurer. Thank you so much. Beth Freeman, the Regional Administrator for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is also here with us. And Larry Heisel, the Executive Director of the Federal Executive Board, which is like the Chamber of Commerce for federal agencies, for the 148 federal agencies in the greater Kansas City area. Okay, I'd like to introduce the moderator for this next panel, and many of you know her. She has clout beyond clout. She is the founder of KC SourceLink, which is now grown into US SourceLink, and is all over the country. And I believe there's something in our program about Maria, but we don't have that much time because she is a very celebrated person and a champion for small business. Maria Meyers.
Hello, Kansas City. Hello to everybody who's live streaming this from far away. I hope you're in one of our US SourceLink locations. Look us up there. So I am Maria Meyers, and I have the wonderful privilege of leading about 230 organizations here in the Kansas City region who support entrepreneurship and small business through a program called KC SourceLink. KC SourceLink is made up of organizations from incubators to small business development centers to angel groups to microlenders, all kinds of groups that come together and build a platform from which we can make Kansas City America's most entrepreneurial city. At the core of this network are a couple of really terrific programs funded by our Small Business Administration, our Small Business Development Centers, our Small Business and Technology Development Centers, our Women's Business Centers, and SCORE. So they provide the underlying counseling, coaching, and training to our network here in the Kansas City region. I've got with me on the panel, let's see, I've got an attorney, a banker, an engineer, and an entrepreneur, all of whom are passionate about making Kansas City America's most entrepreneurial city. And they're going to allow me to throw questions at them for the next 45 minutes, and we'll see how they answer those questions. Let me start with Tom McDonnell. Tom is an entrepreneur. He picked up a firm called DST when it was very small and grew it to 11,000 employees, and then took on the reins of the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation here in Kansas City, the foundation of entrepreneurship. So Tom, I'm going to throw the first question at you. Why is entrepreneurship important for what we do in this nation?
Well, that's a question we're often asked. If you step back, I think it's pretty clear, and certainly Greg and others could attest to this, that we live now in a global economy. And to compete in that global economy, the needs, demands, and wants of people are changing quite dramatically, which means that there has to be innovation to address those needs, wants, and demands. And when we look at successful companies in the U.S. and elsewhere, they've grown by identifying those needs, bringing an entrepreneurial spirit, an ambitious individual, along with other resources like capital, to meet them and grow the great businesses that we have here in Kansas City. You'll hear about one later, which is H&R Block. You've certainly heard about Burns & Mac. We certainly know the legacy of Marion Labs, all of which started as very small companies. Today, when we look at job creation, which is essential to the growth of our economy, jobs are created, by and large, statistically by companies less than 5 years old. So as we step back for a minute, what's the entrepreneurial aspect of that? Well, it's finding and meeting those needs so that that can be a company that starts small but grows. But there's an implication in this global economy we deal in today. Generally, for some period of time, the U.S. has had tremendous advantages because it has intellectual property and it has capital. In some ways, I like to think of the U.S. as part of the global economy as being, to borrow a phrase or to borrow a slogan, sort of the Intel inside the world. So if we can continue that innovation along the lines that it creates that differentiated value-added product, we'll continue to see that growth. So entrepreneurs, new company formations to meet what are now global demands are absolutely critical to the U.S. economic health over time. And when we look at the startup businesses and how jobs are created, as I indicated, most of the 80% of job growth is companies less than 5 years old. But then there's a natural life cycle, particularly when we're dealing in the innovative technology economy that we see globally today. Startups, with the exception of people like Tesla Motors that require massive capital, most startups require more human capital in the formative stages than they do economic capital. But as they grow, they start to shift to substituting economic capital for human capital. It's the nature of all businesses, because once they start generating economic resources, they invest them in technology and other assets to improve broadly defined productivity and therefore revenue and income per capita of their employees, which is important because as they grow, the nature of those jobs changes, and in many cases, the jobs become higher quality. Because when you reach out from your local target market to a global market, you need different marketing resources, different logistics resources, and so forth. So that's the natural life cycle. But if we don't have that initial kernel, that entrepreneur who can take an idea, match it to that unmet need, unmet want, or unmet demand, bringing a solution to that. And in many cases, those solutions are existing technologies creatively applied to a particular problem defined by what I'm calling the unmet needs and wants. And by the way, unmet needs may be much more prevalent in developing economies. Unmet wants, much more in developed economies. And I'd even probably add wants into two categories, because there's unmet desires, which may go to the high end of the Jimmy Choo line of shoes or wherever you go. So at any rate, that's the natural evolution of entrepreneurship. It's absolutely critical. And when we look at the businesses that have grown in Kansas City, the businesses that are here, you can trace most of them back to roots of very small businesses, starting by one or two individuals with the idea, identifying that need, want, or demand, and applying a solution. After applying it successfully, scaling it globally.
Thanks, Tom. So my banker, Peter deSilva. Peter is President and Chief Operating Officer of UMB Financial Corp, and he holds a number of other titles as well. Peter's one of the leaders in making this Kansas City America's most entrepreneurial city. And you know what? Things are pretty hot in Kansas City right now around entrepreneurship. Peter, what do you think is doing that? Tell us what's going on.
Well, thanks, Maria. It's great to be with everybody this morning in America's most entrepreneurial city, right? Come on, you guys. You got to believe it. You got to believe it if we're going to make it happen. But you know what, Maria? The truth is, what we're talking about with America's most entrepreneurial city isn't really new. Kansas City has been an entrepreneurial hotbed for a century and a half now, in essence. And I think it really started with the westward expansion. Now, I know I'm going back a little bit, but talk about rugged individualism and the need to move from east to west. This was the stopping off point. This was the place that people came and retooled and got themselves ready to go on the next part of their journey. And we are on a journey still as America's most entrepreneurial city. A number of names have already been mentioned this morning about some of the former entrepreneurs that built Kansas City's economy upon which we rest today. We all know the stories of Joyce Hall, who came here with a cardboard box of cards and turned that into Hallmark cards. We know the stories about people like Ewing Kauffman, and we're in his buildings, for goodness sake, and Marion Laboratories. We've heard the great stories of J.C. Nichols. Anybody go to the Country Club Plaza? I mean, talk about imagination, talk about an idea to build the first outdoor drive-up automobile mall in America, right here in the middle part of the country. That didn't happen in my hometown of Boston. It actually happened right here in Kansas City, which is really, really cool. So you can go through all the history of the entrepreneurs upon whose shoulders we are building the future economy here in Kansas City. So that's sort of our legacy of entrepreneurship, and I could go on for many more minutes about that. Then I think you've got a second tier of entrepreneurs who are still running their companies in a very vibrant and large way. Neil Patterson, Cliff Illig at Cerner Corporation. They've built an amazing, amazing company out of an idea in a rose garden with 11,000 employees now and making major, major impact in greater Kansas City and across the world in medical records automation. But trust me, they're not done. Anybody know how the name Garmin was created? Two founders, Gary Burrell and Min Kao. Garmin. Literally, Garmin Corporation right here in Kansas City, right? They're still driving their companies forward. And then there's now this whole new generation of people whose names you don't even know, and I'm just beginning to understand. There are people like Toby Rush, running a company called iVerify with biometric screening. There's folks like what's going on at the Kansas City Startup Village. If you have an extra 30 minutes on your trip here today, or if you have 30 minutes anytime, go down to the Kansas City Startup Village, walk around, and just see what's going on. See the vibrancy. See what's happening over there. There are companies like Leap 2. Check it out, by the way, if you haven't checked out Leap 2. Lantern, and many other companies that I could discuss. The Digital Sandbox. Maria's leading this effort to really incubate small entrepreneurial companies in Kansas City. And so is it a hotbed? You bet. Always has been. Hopefully always will be. Now, the real question isn't whether it is, because it is indeed a hotbed. The question is why? Why is Kansas City such a hotbed for entrepreneurism today? And I think there's 4 reasons for it. 1, there's a strong legacy. We've talked about that. We know how to do it. 2, we have the greatest combination of support resources for entrepreneurs, I think, of any community in the world, period, bar none. My friend to the left here, Tom McDonnell, runs the World's Foundation of Entrepreneurship, the Kauffman Foundation, and the kind of programming and support they give is second to none. We've got the Block School over at UMKC. We've got Google Fiber. We've got KC SourceLink. We've got any number of accelerators. I can go on and on and on. We have the greatest support resources for entrepreneurs of anywhere in the world, guaranteed, and I think that's a major reason we're moving forward. Third, one of the things I'm really proud of that we've done in the last couple of years is we've created a real connection between smaller enterprises and larger enterprises. What Sprint has done recently with Techstars to create its own accelerator down in the crossroads here in Kansas City, Missouri, is unbelievable. And what we're seeing now are ideas generated through Techstars that hopefully will become organizations that'll live on and on and on. We have great human capital in Kansas City, and we have good baseline financial capital in Kansas City. Two things we need to do, I think, to continue this trend and continue to put us on the world stage. Number one, we've got to tell the Kansas City story better, to be truthful. We've got to tell it on a national stage and ultimately on a global stage. And that's something I'm trying to do, and hopefully we're all going to do. And second, and this is something we have to work on, I believe we have plenty of financial capital here, or economic capital, as Tom described it, but we do need to network it better. I'm amazed at how many of my friends, colleagues, and folks around town tell me they just financed a deal, they just financed another deal, they just financed another deal. And when I ask them what were the deals, they say, well, they're outside Kansas City. And we ask them why, they say, well, I wasn't really aware that those sorts of opportunities existed in our town. So we're going to try to fix that too, Maria, but we are the hotbed of economic and entrepreneurship in Kansas City, and that will continue for a long time to come.
Well, if you've been listening, you've been hearing something about making Kansas City America's most entrepreneurial city. So I think we've got that embedded in all of our thinking. So the engineer that was behind that, getting that happen, was Greg Graves. Now, you've met Greg before, but he was the one that really got us started along this path. So tell me about that process, Greg, and how we ended up with this goal of making Kansas City America's most entrepreneurial city.
I actually haven't been an engineer for a long time. The Burns and McDonnell people are very scared if they think of me engineering anything again. So the Chamber of Commerce, in the year that I was the chamber chair, a few months before that began, Jim Heater and I had breakfast, and we came up with the idea of initiating the Big Five here in Kansas City. Something I'm very proud of, and the chamber has worked extremely hard on, and we've established great champions like Peter deSilva for one of those Big Five. The Big Five began for exactly the reasons that Mark Holland and Sly James talked about. We have a lot of aspirations in this town, but sometimes it's tough to get focused when you have 100 cities and 6 counties and 2 states, and it's hard for us to think as a city sometimes. Instead, we think of being from Stillwell or Kansas City, Missouri, but the truth is we're all just from Kansas City, right? And it's, except maybe when the Chiefs make the playoffs and we all get excited at once, or then when they lose in the playoffs at the last minute, we all get sad at once. Sometimes we don't think of a greater community, and so the establishment of the Big Five was Jim's and my desire, and the board of the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce's desire, that our city, Big KC, would have some goals, things that we wanted to accomplish. Some of those goals were needs, like Tom McDonnell talked about, like the revitalization of an urban neighborhood that's been ignored by a lot of us in this town for way too many years. The most important thing to help that need would be the establishment of small businesses in that urban neighborhood. Jobs create futures. And so that was a good example of a need. A good example of a want is the downtown campus of the UMKC Conservatory of Music and Dance, which had some great news yesterday when a group of anonymous donors gave them the site, a $7 million gift towards that project. Peter, that was so nice of you not to want all the credit for... I always like people to know when Burns and McDonnell does something. I totally admit it. And that will do so much for downtown, you just won't believe it. Can you imagine a couple of thousand 18 to 22 to 25-year-olds living, breathing, working, going to school every day in downtown? You think the Fire and Light District is interested in all those kids being down there? I'll bet that they are. Sometimes it's a desire, like Tom talked about. and that's for Kansas City to be the home of America's most entrepreneurial city. And I totally agree with what Peter said and what my mentor here, Tom McDonnell, said. Tom has the best job in the whole world. I think my dream job, running the Kauffman Foundation. Those things are all in place to help you. You only have to ask. The Million Cups breakfasts, or all the different things, Maria's organization, you only have to ask. And of course, the Chamber's Big Five will put a spotlight on that and work on that until it's true.
Thanks, Greg. Jim, you've been involved in the Big Five since its inception as well, and you had a very lucrative career as being an attorney and gave that up to come over and take over the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber works with all kinds of small businesses and entrepreneurs. So tell me, what makes this a great location for entrepreneurship?
Well, there are a lot of things, Maria, that make this a great location for entrepreneurship and also for traditional small business, which is something we probably should talk about a little bit today as well. First thing I should probably note is that I guess I'm the lawyer on the panel, but for the record, I have been president and CEO of the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce for a little over 4 years now, so I'm at least a lawyer in recovery. Like my good friends, Mayor James and I are both recovering lawyers, and we're happy to be so, and happy to be in positions in which we get to serve now. We've covered, I think, pretty well the background of the Chamber's Big Five entrepreneurial initiative, which has been so enormously successful under the leadership, the championship really of deSilva. But that would not have come about without the leadership of Greg Graves and the Big Five. It would not have come about without Tom McDonnell and the Kauffman Foundation. So the Chamber acknowledges a big, big debt to all three of my fellow panelists in making the Chamber's entrepreneurship initiative America's most entrepreneurial city, Kansas City, what it is today, and we're just getting started. A couple of things. When I came to the Chamber 4 years ago, it was an interesting time. And one of the things that I observed is that chambers like us in cities like Kansas City, all over the country, were getting out of the business of small business. There were a lot of reasons for that. They were coming off a difficult economic time. A lot of those chambers were applying the 80-20 rule and concluding that 80% of their revenue came from 20% of their members, and they were getting out of the business of small business. I thought that was exactly the wrong thing to do. And with the backing of deSilva, who was the first chairman with whom I had the privilege of serving, we went exactly the opposite direction. We always had a good small business program, in fact, a very good small business program with the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. We decided to kick it up a notch or two or three. And so what we've done over the last couple of years is this. We have refocused our energies on traditional small business, what we call emerging business, which is entrepreneurial business, and diverse small business, which we haven't talked about yet today, but it's really an important part of any community's economy, and we believe it's a very important part of Kansas City's small business economy. And we thought that all three of those were linked: emerging business, traditional small business, and diverse small business. So we didn't put them in separate boxes, even on the organizational chart. We put them all together with separate task forces under one small business, emerging business, diverse business task force. And that has worked beautifully, beautifully well. We probably have a dozen, maybe closer now to 15 programs that we have in the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce designed, as Greg Graves just mentioned, to help you, to help traditional small business, entrepreneurial business, diverse business that we didn't have even 3 years ago. And we're really proud of that. And the response to that has been gratifying and very, very successful. The other thing that we continue to do is that we continue to celebrate small business, which is important, which is a part of what we're doing here today, is we're celebrating small business and its role in our economy and in our community. And one of the ways that we do that is with our small business celebration. The Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce is proud to have the oldest and the largest celebration of small business in America. This is our 28th year. An event, a program that really started as a luncheon. It was a small business luncheon. And now it's 6 weeks of small business celebration. Just last week, we sold out the house at a breakfast meeting where our top 10 small businesses of the year were named and presented. Some of you were there. In fact, I think several of you were there. That is from 1,000 nominees. There were 1,000 small businesses nominated. And last week, we unveiled the top 10 small businesses of 2014. And what was cool about the program is that we had the CEOs, the founders, in many cases, of those small businesses there, and they were the program. And they said so many wonderful things, and people learned so much. It's one of our favorite chamber events of the entire year. And in 2 weeks, we'll have a big luncheon, and from that top 10 list, we'll select the Chamber's Small Business of the Year, our Mr. K, our Mr. Kaufman Award winner. So we continue to work very actively in all of those areas. The one thing I'll tell you about my just personal experience, and this goes back to being a lawyer, is that I was lucky to work with a lot of great companies, a lot of big public companies, the names of which you would recognize, a lot of big private or family-held companies. But the companies with which I enjoyed working most were what we call growth companies. And I'll just give you one example. That was an example of a person who started with a vision. He had simply an idea. The next thing you know, he had a plant in a soybean field. And a few years down the road, after I don't know how many iterations of financing and growth, it was fun to stand on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange and ring the bell when that company was listed for trading on the New York Stock Exchange. So that's part of why I am so committed to and so believe in small business and entrepreneurial business and growth companies, and so privileged to be here with all of you this morning.
Thanks, Jim. Tom, Jim mentioned a few programs that have been developed through the Chamber, and the Kaufman Foundation has created just a number of programs as well. They were instrumental in funding the original KC SourceLink back in 2003. But there have been so many programs like SourceLink that have started here and grown nationally or globally. You've sort of taken the world by storm with programs that we created right here in Kansas City. Can you tell us about some of those programs?
Glad to. Stepping back just for a second, when we look at entrepreneurship, and by the way, Ewing Kaufman, who obviously founded this foundation, his goal was to have people become economically self-sufficient, either through a good education and the opportunity to have an economic business opportunity through entrepreneurship. So we focus on those two. The challenge on entrepreneurship is that it's not a well-defined science. So the first thing, when we look and say, how do we address this? The first thing is creating awareness. I mentioned earlier the job growth from entrepreneurial companies. So we've addressed awareness at a couple levels. One's at the policy level, and we think that that battle is pretty much won. You go to Washington, you go to state government, city government, chambers, they all recognize now that we will not have economic success without entrepreneurial activity. But the other side of the awareness is for individuals to be aware that they can have an opportunity to be engaged in an entrepreneurial adventure and take it forward. So when we come from awareness, then we come down and say, well, where does entrepreneurship really happen? Yes, there's national issues. We did a lot of work on immigration policy. We do work on patent policy. We do work on a lot of things like that. But when we talk to visitors to the foundation, what they want to know is how do they get economic activity going in their geography? Is it that city? Is it that metropolitan area? Is it that state? So when we look at that, we say, okay, well, we've created the awareness. Now what do we do? So we've tried to address that with a number of programs. Now stepping back up to the very high end, probably the most visibility we have, but it's awareness, and it's starting to move more towards programmatic implementation, is something that we call Global Entrepreneurship Week. We started that several years ago. It now opens simultaneously in 140 countries. And this is not only awareness, but it's a celebration of entrepreneurs and their achievements and their success. In connection with that, we have a 1 week in Kansas City that's also very successful about bringing a lot of these together. So if we step back again, though, for a minute, we say, okay, we've got awareness, then what else do you need? Well, to be successful, you need to have connections. You need to be able to connect people, businesses with resources. We haven't said enough about Maria and her activity. What started as Kansas City SourceLink is now U.S. SourceLink, was originally funded by the Kaufman Foundation and implemented at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, which is where SourceLink is now housed. Maria has over 27 affiliates nationwide. And what SourceLink does is connect individuals to those resources they need. That may be advice, maybe services, maybe connections. You have to have that in your community in order to have entrepreneurial activity succeed. We believe SourceLink's a great tool for that, but when you do an analysis of a community, you have to say, is it there already, or do you need to have it? Going a little beyond connections are networks. So how do you create networks? We have a program that had its second anniversary in April called 1 Million Cups that we started here in Kansas City. It was started at the foundation, like I say, 2 years ago, April, and it originally had two startup entrepreneurs come in and tell us about their business. And when I say us, initially it was just 12 people from the foundation, because while we talked a lot about entrepreneurship, did a lot of research, a lot of studies, we had not connected with that many small businesses directly. So maybe that first one was more like a petting zoo for entrepreneurs. But what has happened since then is expanded. We've had 2 entrepreneurs, 2 startup businesses every week now for over 2 years. We now have attendance in Kansas City between 250 and 300 people a week. It's every Wednesday from 9 to 10 o'clock. The companies take a few minutes to present their business, and then they interact with the audience. Not only questions, but suggestions, connections of how did I have a product like yours and I got it, internet distribution this way. So it's creating a network and support groups. And by the way, we now have 1 Million Cups operating in 30 cities in the United States. So it's a scalable activity. So you get the connections, SourceLink, you get the networks through things like 1 Million Cups. What else is necessary? Well, out of SourceLink, for instance, some great programs, one called Whiteboard to Boardroom, that gets products out there. Digital Sandbox, which I think you're all familiar with. Peter alluded to it earlier. These things create an awful lot. And by the way, on the connection side, probably one of the best examples we have that can cascade through this, I mentioned we did a lot of work on entrepreneurship, or pardon me, on immigration. And our point was not who's coming across the border. It was the growth of businesses that were started by entrepreneurs and their impact on the U.S. economy. Peter mentioned Toby Rush earlier, I-Verify. One of the things that Kaufman brought to Kansas City last year for the first time was a competition that otherwise had been global, called Get in the Ring. We orchestrated it here in the United States. We started with 287 contestants from around the country. We got down to our finals here in Kansas City where we had 8. And interestingly, I-Verify, a Kansas City company, won here in Kansas City, and then went to the global competition in Rotterdam and won then. But let me tell you a little about I-Verify. It started with technology from an immigrant professor at UMKC. It was picked up by a serial entrepreneur, Toby Rush, who'd gone through a number of Kaufman programs. It lives over by Startup Village, and it's an excellent example of each one of these pieces that I mentioned earlier. Obviously, the awareness, connection of resources and individuals, because so much of this is dependent upon individuals coming out and finding those needs, but also finding technologies or solutions to meet those needs. So we take it further beyond that. Once an entrepreneur started, we have Fast Track, which walks them through the aspects of starting a business. We've recently introduced Founder School, which has much more targeted, very specific programs like how do you sell in an entrepreneurial environment versus a developed environment. So we continue to add to that catalog and list of those support activities. But when you're thinking about business development in your geography, awareness, once you have that, how do you get the connections? How do you get the networks? And then what are the support processes, the tools, the education, and so forth that you need? We have a lot that are branded by Kaufman, as I mentioned earlier, but if you step back from them and say, what are they? You can analyze your particular area, and then you can see how you might fit some of these readily available programs into those solutions.
Thanks, Tom. So we've heard about lots of different programs being put on by lots of different people. We know about our small business development centers, women's business centers. We've talked about KC SourceLink and lots of other things. But building an entrepreneurial environment isn't just about the resources for entrepreneurs. Greg, what makes this community a great place to live?
So I get asked commonly about our ranking in Fortune. And so you heard, no, Pat, earlier. It was all Pat, thank you. We were ranked the 14th best place to work in America. And people say, okay, is it because you're employee-owned? Nope. Is it your executive management model that you put in place at your firm that I'm very proud of? Nope. The number one thing I think that has the advantage of our firm as a great place to work is being in Kansas City. I really believe that. Here in Mid-America, it's like Peter talked about, people that couldn't make it all the way west, they had to come up with a business to start right here, right? Or start farming or start working hard. People in Kansas City hustle like nowhere else I've ever seen in America. And I'm from South Dakota, where you really had to hustle. I have offices all around the country. Peter has offices all around the country. Well, Tom had offices all over the world. Nobody hustles like they do here or works as hard as they do here. So when we talk about the secret to our growth or the secret to our success, I think it's just the same as the secret to being successful here in Kansas City. It's who's the next person we're going to hire. And is that person going to be a star? Being a great place to work and hiring the people who are going to make it a better place to work and that is the most important thing an entrepreneur does. So yeah, they have to have a great idea, or there has to be a need, they have to find a place where they're going to fit it in that niche. It's the people who work there who make companies like this go. Last year we hired 800 new people. We had 77,000 people apply to come to work at our place. You're the same. A lot of people want to come work for you. You just haven't met them yet. And I'll tell you what, I don't know how many times I've heard people here say, well, we got to hire 5 people because I need 5 more people. You don't need 5 more people. You need 5 more stars. And if there's anything that I think will help a small business of 2 become 22, it's not believing that you have to go hire that 3rd person today until the perfect 3rd person shows up in your door. For us, that almost always comes from Midwest kids being right here in Mid-America. So.
Peter, how about from your perspective? What makes this a great a place to live?
Peter, why are we so much better than Boston?
I've lived here for 10 years now, and except for the sports teams, things here are really good. Really, really good. I didn't start that. Go ahead. So just what makes Kansas City such a great place for entrepreneurs and small businesses?
Right. Maybe you and Jim can both answer this one.
Sure. Well, look, I think Greg hit on it. Tom hit on it. As I've mentioned earlier, we have this amazing, amazing community around here. We have people who are willing to take risks. As you know, the risk takers own the future, right? That's what they say. People who are willing to take risks ultimately will set the direction for the future and own tomorrow. And Kansas City has a unique blend, I think, of organizations like our chamber that said, we're going to shine a light on this entrepreneurship thing. We're not even sure exactly we know what it is exactly, but we're going to put a light on it, and we're going to make sure that we incubate it. We've got the greatest entrepreneurial ecosystem, as I said earlier, anywhere in America, maybe anywhere in the world, literally. You know, Silicon Valley wasn't Silicon Valley until it became Silicon Valley. And somebody decided that that was a good idea. We have decided, our community has decided, that this is going to be America's most entrepreneurial city. You know, I remember going to see Tom's predecessor at the Kauffman Foundation when Jim tapped me and Greg tapped me and said, would you consider leading this effort to make us really entrepreneurial? And Carl Schramm said to me, just make it so. What do you mean just make it so? And I said, Carl, hold on a second. I run a business. When I say I'm going to do something, I like to commit to it and actually like to be able to execute it and get it done. I'm a little uncomfortable standing up and telling the rest of the world that Kansas City is America's most entrepreneurial city when I know we've got some work to do. He's like, oh, knock it off. Just get up there, tell everybody in the world that we're the most entrepreneurial city and then work to make it happen. I said, but what if they call me on it? I mean, they're going to call me out. He said, don't worry about it. And he told me the story of Indianapolis, a like city to Kansas City in many respects, and how 25 years ago, they set a vision for themselves. And their vision was to be the amateur sports capital of the world. And you know one of the first things they did? They came to Kansas City and they stole the NCAA. So payback's going to be tough for them. So anytime there's an entrepreneurial organization in Indianapolis, I'm looking to bring them to Kansas City. But seriously, they had a vision. They didn't have all the pieces put together. They had an idea. We have an idea, but we had more than an idea. We had a lot of the pieces where we could back it up. So if somebody stopped me on the street and said, how could you say that last week in the newspaper? I could point to Kaufman, I could point to the Chamber, I could point to all the accelerators in town, I could point to any number of assets. And we're going to continue to work on those assets, Maria. We're going to continue to network individuals through 1 Million Cups, through our networking dinners and such that we're having for entrepreneurs. And mark my words, this is America's most entrepreneurial city, and a decade from now, you will recognize it if you don't already, and the rest of the world will recognize it as well.
Maria asked me to comment on that. I would add simply a couple of things. First of all, as to what makes us a great place to start a business and grow a business and succeed in business. We are a terrific place to live, a great place to raise a family. As Greg pointed out, we have a well-educated, highly motivated, and highly ethical workforce. That's important and should not be taken for granted. We are also so much more, though, because there are a lot of communities that have several, if not all, of those assets. Among other things, we're a city with great amenities. Talk about our sports teams. Well, we may not have had some of the success, Peter, of the Red Sox and the Patriots. We are one of the very few cities of our size to have 3 professional sports teams. And we're one of the very, very few cities in the country to have a professional ballet, a lyric opera, a symphony, and one of the best repertory theater groups in the nation. We are easily recognized in both the visual and performing arts as one of the top 10 cities in the country, and we simply get better every single day. And every day we're a better place for the millennials, for the young people. And Greg mentioned this as a part of our Big Five in terms of the Downtown Arts Campus. One of the wonderful things about that is it gives us a greater ability to retain and attract young, energetic, creative people. You know, there's a school of thought, by the way, of economic development that says if a community does that, if it does that one thing, everything else will take care of itself. I tend to subscribe to that. And every single day we get better and better and better as a city of young people. In fact, the Huffington Post came out today with a list of top 20 cities in the country for folks in their 20s, and for the first time, Kansas City is on that list. So there are And if I could make one more comment, Maria, it's this, that Kansas Cityans are, in addition to being hardworking, ethical, they're also very, very generous. This is a city that is in large measure built on generosity and philanthropy. And one of the reasons that's important, I think, for us to grow our own, for us to encourage entrepreneurial businesses and small businesses, is because they stay here when they're very, very successful. And whether it's Hallmark or H&R Block, or a host of other companies, you look around this city, philanthropy has built a lot of that, and that's because of companies that were started here and made successful here, and they stayed here and wanted to give back to the community. When we did that top 10 program I mentioned to you last week, it was very cool because there were a lot of tips about how you succeed as a small business person, how do you start a company, how you grow it, how you get to the point where you're one of the top 10 businesses in Kansas City for 2014. What was really cool was how many of those folks talked about giving back and the things they did in their companies. Even though they're not big companies yet with foundations, they were doing things in their company every single day to give back to this community. And I think that's another reason that Kansas City is an extraordinarily special place.
Thank you. Right, we're down to just a couple minutes. I'm going to let Peter take us on home.
Thanks, Maria. The last comment I'd make is when we started this activity, this entrepreneurial activity here a few years ago, people started to say, Peter, you're leading this initiative, you're leading this initiative, you're leading this initiative, and I kept correcting him and saying, no, this is not an initiative. This is a movement. We are trying to create an entrepreneurial and small business movement in Greater Kansas City. And if you think about the difference between an initiative and a movement, an initiative has a beginning and an end. It has an identified leader who runs that initiative. It has a pretty prescribed path, and when that path is done, you say, declare victory and move on, right? A movement never ends. It's perpetual. And so think of what we're trying to do in this town in that way. And I think that's what we have to do in America, is really create an entrepreneurial movement for the country, not an initiative with a beginning and an end. And if you think of it that way, and you think of things like Apple, and how Apple was really more of a movement, I think, than a company, and how the Beatles transformed transform the world at some level around music, they were a movement. They weren't just a couple of guys basically who said, well, let's do this for a year or two, we'll close the initiative down and move on. They changed things forever. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a movement that will forever change the economy here in metropolitan Kansas City and ultimately across the country. So thank you.
So we've declared we're going to make Kansas City America's most entrepreneurial city, and with the passion, the leadership, the support of this team up here, how can we fail? Thank you very much for allowing us to talk to you this morning.
Thank you, panel. Thank you. And you are live streaming in Kansas City, in case you did not know that. We have the blocks in the house, and if any of you need to go out and get a little refreshment, this might be a good time for you to do that. And just be sure that you're back in your seats at no later than 10 after. All right, thank you so much. We're getting ready to start a conversation with a legend. If you're live streaming, you're here in Kansas City, the heart of America, and we're Kansas City is getting ready to be the most entrepreneurial city in the U.S. We have thrown down the gauntlet. Okay. All right, this is just such an honor for me today to introduce Mr. Henry Block and his son, Tom. And I don't know that we have to tell too many people about H&R Block, but for those of you who don't know and who don't have all of this in your agenda in front of you, I'm just going to tell you a couple of things about Mr. Henry Block, co-founder and honorary chairman of the board of H&R Block. He graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in mathematics, and he was a first lieutenant and navigator on a B-17 Flying Fortress with the 8th Air Force, U.S. Army Air Corps, flying 31 combat missions during World War II, and awarded the Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you so much, sir, for your, thank you. And he's received all kinds of honorary degrees from Avila College, New Hampshire College, University of Missouri, Kansas City, William Jewell, Kansas City Art Institute, University of Michigan, so he's also Dr. Block. Okay. And the son is a very interesting individual as well. Tom joined H&R Block in 1976, and he spearheaded the automation of the company's retail network and the practice of filing tax returns electronically. Thank you so much. But that wasn't good enough for him. So he decided to have a career change and become an educator. Yes. Highly, highly. My mother was a teacher. I love educators. And his second career began as a middle school math teacher at St. Francis Xavier, and that's an inner city parochial school. And it grew from 200 students in grades 7 through 9 in its first year to 1,000 students in kindergarten through grade 12. And they just moved into a $40 million facility in 2005. Yay. And it was the first school in Missouri, live streaming people, to receive a 10-year extension of its charter. He is an author. His first book was Stand for the Best. His second book is Many Happy Returns. And many happy returns to Mr. Block.
Thank you very much. We are honored to be here and to spend a bit of time with you all. I'm going to start this off. We're going to have a bit of an informal conversation and then turn it open to you. So we'll have a Q&A session toward the end of our time together. And it's always a treat for me to be with Dad and talk about how he got started, how H&R Block became what it is today. And it's really a remarkable story because, Dad, I know we've got so many folks here who are small business, many entrepreneurs, and I think it's fair to say, though I'm maybe a bit prejudiced, that you're one of the great entrepreneurs of the 20th century or 18th century. I'm not sure what it is. Dad grew up here in Kansas City and was born in 1922. So can anybody figure out how old he is? He's 91. He'll be 92 this summer. So, but Dad, you went to Southwest High School, right? And you know, knowing what you accomplished after high school, I'm guessing you were like a straight A student, just a really smart, over-the-top kind of academic star. Is that right?
I wish I could say it was, but it's not. I was a fair student. I worked very hard, and I made about a C average at best.
But you say that was a good thing.
I'd say that was a good thing because I had to keep working hard, and I've always worked hard.
So you learned from an early age that working hard was just what it took.
Yeah.
At age 13, you went to see a movie. You loved going to the movies. I don't think they had 3D screens back then, or even color. But there was one movie in particular that you saw that has stuck with you to this very day. Can you tell these folks a little about that movie and why did it have an effect on your life?
It was the life of Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur was a doctor that lived in France, and I remember how the picture started out. He was in a room with a nurse and a patient who had just died, and he said, "Well, we ought to pack up and leave." And she threw everything in a case, and he said, "Well, aren't you going to clean that stuff?" And she said, "No, I will later." But
why did that movie have such an effect?
Because he really helped people, and I thought he just did the pasteurization of milk, but he was involved in a lot of not-for-profit causes.
So what did that
to
make
really
you
help people? And I thought, that's what I want to do when I grew up. I want to help people. I want to do something. I just didn't want to be born, get a job, and that would be the end of it. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. My father was a lawyer, and I used to hear him give advice to people, and I said, I don't want to do that. And but I did want to be involved in the community and help people.
So you started off at what was then called the University of Kansas City, now called UMKC.
Right, I went there for
a year.
1 year after I graduated from high school, mainly because I was so young. I was 16. We didn't have a 7th grade, and so. And
so then you ended up going to the University of Michigan. Why did you switch there to Michigan?
I had a great aunt living in New York City, whose brothers went to Michigan, and she said, if I go to Michigan, she'd pay my way. And in those days, you didn't go around shopping colleges. You just picked out, I don't know anybody that did that. You just picked out a school and went there. And so that sounded like a good deal to me. And so I said, thank you, and I went to Michigan.
And you played a lot of bridge in college, and you were a pretty darn good bridge player.
I liked bridge, I played.
And you won some money playing bridge, didn't you?
Well, occasionally. Yeah, I had a roommate who paid all my losses and got half my winnings.
Okay, well, that's pretty good. So your junior year, you were actually playing in a bridge tournament there at the University of Michigan on a Sunday, I believe.
Playing on a Sunday.
And somebody rushed into this tournament to give big news. And that really changed the trajectory of your life.
Well,
what happened on that day?
I was a junior at Michigan playing in this bridge tournament, and when Pearl Harbor happened. And so after a while, I enlisted because most of my friends were enlisting, and I saw an ad that said if you enlist in the Air Force, and you're going to college, we'll let you stay in college and graduate. So I thought that was a pretty good deal, and I enlisted, but they went back on their word. And, the middle of my senior year, they called me into active duty, and you know, when Uncle Sam calls, you just go. So.
You were actually picked to become a pilot on a bomber.
Right.
But something happened. Your mother got involved in this.
When I
what
went
happened?
When I went in, I said I was going to be a navigator, and she felt, I think she didn't have much confidence in me. Yeah. And she said, if you're, pardon me, I don't want you to be a pilot. I want you to be a navigator.
She told you, in fact, she told you, she said, if you're going to be a pilot, what was the rest of that?
Your father will go to Washington and get you out of service, as if he could.
So you ended up flying, as we heard in that beautiful introduction, 31 combat missions over Germany.
We were shot up on every one. Our first mission was Berlin, and it was only the second time they had been bombed, and we lost on that first mission 3 of our engines, and we were losing fuel, and we couldn't stay with the formation after we dropped our bombs, and came back to the target, to England, where we were stationed. When we landed, we were out of gas. So
what were the odds of surviving 30 missions?
They were about 20%.
About 20%.
Survived.
What was the name? Back then, the B-17s usually were painted and had a name on it. What was the name of your plane?
Our plane was called Heaven Can Wait.
Heaven Can Wait. And sure enough, it has.
Yeah, we were very lucky.
So I think it's interesting to point out that after your tour of duty was over, the Air Force wasn't done with you. They picked you for some reason, this average student.
I don't know why, but they sent me to Harvard for a short course in business control.
Statistical control.
Statistical control. And then I became a personnel officer at a B-29 base at Hays, Kansas. The B-29 was like a B-17, but a much bigger plane. And they're the ones that bombed Japan and ended the war.
When you were,
they had plans to bomb Europe too, but they didn't need to.
But tell these folks about that. When you were there at Harvard for about 3 months, when normally at lunch people would go to the cafeteria for lunch, but you didn't do that, and that is why,
Well, occasionally I went to the library, and while I was there, I saw a little booklet, which was a speech given by a professor, Sumner Slichter, at Harvard. And in this speech, he said business is divided into 3 groups. There's big business, small business, and labor. And both big business and labor are very powerful. But small business really has nobody to turn to. Here I'm talking to the experts, but small business doesn't really have anybody to turn to. And he was talking, this was a speech before a group of life insurance companies. And he was trying to get them to invest money to help small business. And he said, small business is really the backbone of this country. And they're the ones that need the help. But it's not very practical, I guess.
So this gave you an idea.
But what he wrote was very true, and it really affected me. So I went over and called on him, and I said, I should back up a little bit. My mother, I have 2 brothers, And she always wanted us to go into business together. She had some uncles that were very successful, and she wanted us to be like they were. And so anyway, I said, I read your speech to the life insurance companies given at the Waldorf Astoria in New York, and I thought it was wonderful. And I wonder if we could, when I get out of service, start a company with my brothers to help small businesses. And he said it'd be wonderful. I don't know if it'll work, but it's needed. So the three of us corresponded. My older brother was in Guam with the Army, and my younger brother was at University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School of Finance. And we corresponded, and we grew up.
You sent emails back and forth?
Not quite. But we developed a business plan, and
tell them about that business plan.
Well, we had about 50 services.
They came up with a business plan to offer 50 different services to small business, to help small businesses. They ranged from, what were some of them?
Well, one of them had never been started. It was a temporary help company.
Temporary help.
So that people could,
bookkeeping,
typing,
secretarial,
decorating,
window decorating. I think taxes was in there somewhere, tax preparation. How much experience did you have in these?
We had no experience. But it made sense, but we had no experience.
And you came up with a fancy name for this company. What was it called? Do you remember?
United Business Company. The name of the company.
So back in 1947, United Business Company was launched. Younger brother Dick didn't do it, but his older brother Leon went into this business with Dad. And they started off going door to door, calling on small businesses on Prospect.
He took one side of the street and I took the other side.
On Prospect Boulevard, here in Kansas City.
Yeah, which is not a high-income area, but we wanted to practice, get down and know what we're doing, so we picked Prospect on purpose.
So how did it go, calling on these?
We called on them, and very unsuccessful. Occasionally, somebody would want a reference, and of course, we had no reference. So finally, my brother said, "We're not going to make it." And
so he left you.
He went back to college. He's a lawyer, and
so you stuck with it.
Yeah, but I forgot one thing. Our aunt, when we started, we decided, since we had all these services, that we need to hire a lot of people. An accountant, an advertising person, people in various different classifications. We needed to hire them. So we wrote this wealthy aunt and went to see, my older brother and I went to see her in New York, and we asked her for a gift of, I believe it was $50,000. And so we could rent a nice big office downtown and hire a bunch of experts. And she did the most wonderful thing. She really made us but we were. She said no. If she'd have said yes, she could have afforded it. If she would have said yes, here's a check for $50,000, go rent your office and hire a lot of people, that business would have failed so bad, because these small little companies, they couldn't afford, they didn't need it, they didn't want this kind of help. It would have been a disaster, and I don't know what would have happened after that.
What did she do?
What she did was say, I won't give you $50,000, but I will loan you $5,000 if your father will co-sign the note. And Dad co-signed the note. We got $5,000. But when my brother left the company, I returned the $5,000 because I didn't need it. We had a small office at 31st and Main, if you know where that is. We sub-rented in a bigger real estate office. We had a little tiny corner.
And you were getting $50 a month, weren't you,
and
from the
under
government?
the GI Bill of Rights, I got $50 a month, which paid the rent. That's what our rent was, $50
And he was playing a little bridge on the side, too.
And
so you were on your own. Your older brother, Leon, left. You started, you continued to call on businesses, and you realized that trying to sell 50 services wasn't going to make it. You narrowed it down to 6, and then further narrowed it down to 1, because you felt that when you got close to selling a customer, it was just one service. And what was that one service?
that was bookkeeping.
Bookkeeping.
And it seemed like our big competitor then was the wives of the owners. They kept the books. So
you finally got your first customer. Who was it?
well, finally, after a while, somebody called us up and said, I don't need you, but my brother's got a hamburger stand at 39th and Main, and he could use you. So we kept his books, charged $15 a month, and there was a widow. I went over to her house every week or so and wrote checks for her, and
So gradually, business picked up, and
we got a list of new businesses from the Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And I called on them and so on.
So finally, Dad decided he needed help, because he couldn't both market the service by calling on different businesses and also servicing the few customers that he had. So what did you do?
So I put an ad in the newspaper to hire somebody, and I only got one answer. That was from my mother. and she said, I know who you should hire. Your brother Dick, that's my younger brother. And he was a smart one in the family. And I said, Mom, I can't hire Dick. He's married. He's got a family. And I was single.
You were living at home.
I was living at home. And she said, well, I'll help you. And I said, oh, Mom, I would never let you help me. I never. But eventually, Dick worked at a company called Stern Brothers downtown, a brokerage firm, largest in town. And so he eventually quit there, and we joined together, and we were a good team. And he did one thing that really made our
Wait,
business.
now wait, you're jumping ahead now.
Yeah.
Before you go there, that's important, but before you go there, the two brothers built up this bookkeeping service they were making an okay living, they had a lot of attrition because they were dealing with small companies that would often go out of business. And so they'd always have to replace those lost accounts.
Oh, yeah.
But then, well, where was I going with that? Oh, I know. He mentioned that they were charging $15 a month for the service, and that service included doing their tax returns. And so word got around town that these two brothers were pretty good at doing tax returns. And so just through word of mouth, they were doing other taxes for non-bookkeeping clients. And how much did you charge?
We charge $5.
$5.
Federal and state.
Federal and state. And so gradually, in the early 50s, the tax season, which ran from January 1st to March 15th back in those days, they were working 7 days and nights a week doing taxes. And they felt like they were not giving their regular bookkeeping clients the service that they deserved. So in 1954, you made a monumental decision. And that decision was what? Do you remember? To get out.
Oh, yeah.
To get out of the tax business.
Yeah. The reason we got into it to begin with, we used to be in the VFW building. If you know where that is, we moved from our office on Main Street. We needed a bigger office to the VFW building. And Mrs., the lady that owned the building asked us if we would put a sign in the lobby that we prepare income taxes. And we said, sure. And a lot of the people, secretaries and so on, in that office building came to us for tax returns, and the business was growing. And then we moved to Westport and Maine.
So they were so darn busy that they decided the right thing to do was to get out of the tax business and concentrate on their bookkeeping customers. So the 1955 tax season rolls along, and what happens? People start walking in.
Yeah, that's right. We had quit preparing tax returns because I'm not quite sure why, but we quit anyway.
So people would come in with their shoe boxes saying,
Yeah.
would you do my taxes? And what'd you say?
We had a few clients, mainly friends and so on.
And what'd you
paying
say?
$5.
When they came in 1950.
And we told them, we've gone out of that business. You've got to find somebody else to prepare your returns. And they said, well, who will we go to? And they said, we don't know, but you'll have to find somebody.
And then there was one
Then
guy.
there's one person that is really responsible for our business, and his name is John White. He's a good friend of mine. He worked for the Kansas City Star, and he handled our advertising because we advertised in the newspaper for bookkeeping, and it worked pretty well. And John came up one day to have his income tax done. And we told him, John, we've gone out of that business. We don't prepare taxes anymore. And so he left. And he came back a few days later with some ads, just like our bookkeeping ads, same size, about 5 or 6 inches, about 2 columns. And instead of saying bookkeeping, $15 a month, it said income tax, $5. And I talked to Dick and me, and I asked him how much the ad was, and he said about $100. And I said, we'd have to do 20 returns just to get our money back. And he said, no. He said, that's not right. He said, to be honest with you, you've got to run at least 2 ads to be sure. And I said, well, that's twice as bad. We'd have to do 40 returns. And Dick said, well, let's take a gamble. You know, all we can lose is $200. So we ran these first 2 ads, and business came in immediately. By then, we moved to Westport in Maine, an office on a high, long flight of stairs, no elevator. But we had an office full of people that first day. And in fact, I was going around picking up books from our clients, and Dick was running the office, and he called and said, or when I got there, they said, you're supposed to call your brother, and Dick said, get back as quickly as you can. We've got an office full of people. And so I came back, and we did these tax returns. Now, you got to remember, in those days, taxes were a lot simpler than they are today, a lot simpler.
So how did the name get changed from United Business Company to H&R Block?
There was a company in Boston named United Business Company, and they wrote us a letter and said, you have the same name we do, and we're a lot bigger than you are, and we would like you to change your name. And to be honest with you, we didn't like that name. We didn't like, United Business Company didn't really say anything. And so it gave us a good opportunity, and so we said, okay, we'll change our name. And which we did.
So after the 1955 tax season, the 2 brothers knew they had something big here. And they were not going to be happy just running that one office at Westport and Main Street. They decided, as Dad said, we had a winning poker hand, and they wanted to play it for all it's worth. So what did you decide to do? Once you knew you had...
Before that, let me say one thing. Dick did one thing that really made our company. We ran this ad, and we had an office full of people going up these long stairs and waiting hours and hours to get their tax return done. And I went to Dick and I said, you know, I got the best idea. Let's quit advertising. And when we get caught up, we'll run another ad. And people can just, you know, they won't have to wait so long. They won't have to sit here and wait for hours. So let's just quit advertising. When we catch up, we'll run another ad. And Dick said, no, we'll never quit advertising. And so we had to improve everything, to hire more people, get a system.
So where did you go in that second tax season?
So the second tax season worked so well, and we were sued. We were sued by lawyers and accountants. Back in those days, they couldn't advertise. Lawyers couldn't advertise. Accountants couldn't advertise. We didn't think we were either one. I mean, we were just preparing tax returns, but they sued us anyway. And so we thought we would move to some place where maybe they'd leave us alone. And we discussed, what about a second office? And again, it was Dick.
You were looking at Topeka, Columbia,
I was thinking of an office around Kansas City.
Des Moines, yeah.
And he said, let's open New York City. And by then I was married and had 2 children. And my wife was pregnant with a 3rd child. We now have 4 children.
Who's your favorite?
I can't say that. But,
in the interest of time, I'm going to cut you off because we do want to open it up for Q&A here. But what happened was they did open New York. They tried they broke even, and then they decided neither Dick nor Dad wanted to live in New York City. They wanted to come back to Kansas City. So they tried to sell that operation. And so just tell them quickly, what did you do to sell it?
Yeah, we ran an ad in the New York Times. We got one answer from 2 CPAs, and they wanted to buy it, and so we sold it to them, and we threw in parts of more of New York and parts of Connecticut and New Jersey,
and suddenly they were in what we now call franchising.
We didn't have any business there, but we gave the buyers permission to use that area with our name.
They sold this wonderful geography with lots of people for $15,000 or $10 or $15,000.
They only had $10,000 between them.
So the idea was, well, pay us a percentage of your ongoing revenue, which we now call a royalty.
Franchise, yeah.
Yeah, and the word franchise didn't exist, but this was at the very same time that Kentucky Fried Chicken and McDonald's were doing the very same thing. So just to take us through about 50 years very, very quickly, the company grew exponentially through both company-owned and franchised operations to the point where it had a network of over 10,000 locations in the United States, Canada, some European countries, Australia, New Zealand, now India, and company prepares in the United States today 1 out of 7 returns, over 20 million tax returns a year, has over approximately 100,000 employees, and is far and away the largest tax preparation firm in the world. And what I think is particularly remarkable about the story is that these were just 2 regular good guys who really cared about their customers. And that's something we haven't really talked about. But for 12 years, Henry and Dick did not raise their prices. They could have, because they had like no competition.
We really were not trying to make the most money. We wanted to satisfy our customers. We wanted to do a good job for them. I mean, we'd do anything to keep our customers.
And I think that was really the success.
Clients came back every year, and we charge them the same thing. And,
so I think if there are 2 lessons from his story or his experience, it is to do the right thing. It's not about trying to get rich or make the most money, but trying to build a successful business that is a service that people care about.
And we enjoyed it.
And also perseverance, because what didn't quite come through in this short period of time is that he struggled for 8 years. For 8 years of almost living hand to mouth, but he never gave up. They finally hit it very big, but for 8 years he never gave up. I think just in my own case I would have given up 1,000 times during that period, but he never did.
The reason I didn't, because I didn't think anybody would want to hire me. There's nothing I could do, and I figured I might as well stay there and just keep working on it.
And
Tom,
we're going to open up. All right, but let me just ask, what do you do now? Just tell these folks, what do you do now with your time?
Now, when I turned 90 and I'm retired, and Tom followed me as CEO, by the way, of the company, and did a wonderful job. You heard that.
So what are you doing
now? Did a lot of teaching. I wanted to do something, and I had lunch with my attorney one day, and I said, I don't know what I want to do, but I just can't sit at home all day. And he said, have you ever heard of starting a foundation? Family foundation. And he gave me some books to read. And these books all said the same thing. If you're worth quite a bit of money and you have children, the worst thing you can do is to leave all your money to your children. The third generation is bad, really bad. And it's just, they all said the same thing. They don't want to work, they don't need to work. The third generation. And so I thought, well, I think I wanted to form a foundation. So we formed a very interesting foundation, and Tom is a very key part of it. And really 3 of us that run it. And we've got 3 legacy organizations that are organizations that I was very close to at the time we founded them. And it's been really a challenge, but it's worked out very, very well.
Do we have time for a few questions? Or couple. We went on and on.
Oh, you meant it. You didn't ask questions.
Hi, my name is Sumo. I'm in the strategy team for H&R Block. I don't know if you've heard of the company. It's a pretty good one. Just wanted to kind of stand up and say, you know, you are a legend. Like, I'm so honored to be here. Living legend. Can we just give it another round of applause?
What do you think?
So honored to see it. My question is simple. You've seen entrepreneurship in Kansas City over the last 60 years. What is your vision for the future of this city that you've given so much back to?
What is your vision for this city? Is that right? That you've given so much back to. What is your vision for Kansas City?
I think Kansas City is a great city to raise a family in. And I know we've got problems like every other city does. But I lived in New York for a while, starting that city, and I wouldn't want to live there. I wish our sports teams did a little bit better, but it's a great town.
It's a great town. Dad has always felt that, you know, H&R Block would never have been successful if it weren't for the people of this community who embraced the concept back in the 50s. And so he feels an obligation to give back to it. And he truly loves this city. He loves this city. And that's what keeps him going.
Let me say this. After I met with this lawyer and decided that's what I want to do, I decided to have my 4 children come over, and they're all married, and I have, I'm expecting my 11th great-grandchild. But I had them come over one day, one Sunday morning, and tell them what I wanted to do. And I thought, they'd say, Dad, give the money to us. Let us. We'll give it to charity. Let us do that. But they all really backed it, and they thought it was wonderful, and especially this guy. But it's worked out well, and I think.
We have time for one more or not?
It's wonderful.
A half a question.
A half a question.
One half question. Make it very quick, please.
Yes. It is an honor, sir, to meet you. I've been here for 20 years, and this is the first time I've ever seen you. I'm an Avila graduate, and I'm also the 10th Ward Committee woman here. And I'd like to say that I'd like you to expand to young people what you said. I do human rights work, too. But I'd like for you to expand, sir, on what you said about it's not about always making money, it's about doing the right thing. What advice would you give to young people who are starting a business and think it's all about money and profit?
Great question.
You just answered the question. I mean,
I couldn't hear.
it was about, you know, you talked about how it wasn't just about making a lot of money, but it was about doing the right thing for your customers. And I mean,
And you've got to enjoy what you're doing too.
yeah,
You've got to enjoy it. It's a challenge, and I think most small business people are challenged, and I think they do enjoy it.
I think our time is up, but let us say how much we enjoyed spending this time with you, and we wish all of you well.
This is like, what an honor, what an honor, here in Kansas City. Mr. Henry Block, a legend, a veteran, an entrepreneur. Thank you so very, very, very much. This is a wonderful day here in Kansas City, and we are going to give you a 5-minute break. 5 minutes, if you need it. But if you don't, stay where you are, because we have we're just getting ready to get started. If you think this was something, you just wait. And then after lunch, we've got panels. And lunch is going to be outside, right here to my left, and also inside. So you can get your lunch, you can eat out, or you can eat in. Laurel? We're great. Okay. Heavy here in Kansas City today, aren't we? Yay! Did you cut? There I am. Did any of you ride the wonderful trolley today? Isn't that neat? We had 2 trolleys, everybody online. And so we've had a fun day getting here. We've had a fun day being here. And the trolley company is courtesy of SCORE. That's the Counselors to America's Small Businesses. They are one of the SBA resource partners, along with the Women's Business Centers, the Small Business Development Centers. And Trinity Limousine Service is a small business, and it's owned by Ken Harris and his son. And Ken is a SCORE volunteer. And this is SCORE's 50th year anniversary. So 50 years, happy anniversary to SCORE. Our next speaker is from Sam's Club. Does anybody ever heard of Sam's Club? Woo! Yeah. Well, who did that? Oh, our speaker did that. She's from Sam's Club. Okay, I love it. Song, you go right in here. Okay. For those that are live streaming, we have a whole page of information on Sung Home. And we don't have all that time to read that song, forgive us. But she is the Senior Vice President of Merchandise Business Services for Sam's Club. And she's been there in that position since February of 2013. She is also the chair for the Asian Pacific Officer Council. And she spent 20 months in Japan as the Senior Vice President, General Manager of General Merchandise and Consumables at Walmart Japan for its 386 stores. Song has also worked for AT&T, Lucent, General Electric, Thompson Consumer, and she was named as one of 15 top innovative women in business by Pink magazine, and also one of the top 100 MBAs by the Diversity magazine. She has a BS in neuroscience, beauty and brains, and an MBA in finance and marketing from the University of Rochester. Song Om, tell us what Sam's gonna do for small businesses.
Thank you, Pat. Good morning. What a morning already, right? So between the panel and Tom and Henry Block, I am so honored to be here joining you guys on stage. And by the way, I would love the organizers to be appreciated one more time for the caliber of the speakers this morning. And my special thanks goes to Roderick Cox, who's the District Director for Kansas City SBA. So thanks for having us here. We're here to celebrate hundreds of small businesses that start every single day. And you guys know small businesses are the backbone of the United States. For all the success stories that we hear at Sam's Club, we also hear small businesses need our help, from lenders to institutions like us, retailers, as well as policymakers. We're gathered here today so that we can actually be champions for small business and bring solutions to the table. I often hear that it's really difficult and challenging to be small. As you can see, I'm barely 5 foot tall, so I know what it's like to be small. I want to tell you a little bit of a personal story. My parents were immigrants from Korea a little over 30 years ago, and they came to the United States to realize the American dream. My father was an engineer, very, very smart, but guess what? He had 5 children, and his aspiration was to send all of us to higher education, right, beyond college. And with an engineer's salary, that was not possible. Even if he had gotten scholarships, that would have been very difficult. So one day, he comes home at the dinner table and says, guess what? I'm quitting my job. Our hearts fell. And so we were calm, panicked a little bit. We were very calm and said, Dad, what are we going to do? He said, I'm going to take all my retirement fund and the savings fund, and we're going to open up a small grocery store downtown Rochester, New York. Well, what did we know about being an entrepreneur? What do we know about running a business? He was an engineer. He knew how to fix TVs and computers. So we actually opened a grocery store downtown Rochester and in a predominantly Puerto Rican neighborhood. And I was the only one who could actually speak Spanish because I took 3 years of high school Spanish. Anyways, later on, my father and my mom, they worked 7 days a week, very, very successful. And all of us went to grad school. We had 2 doctors, 2 MBAs, and 1 computer scientist in the family. So very successful American dream story. My mom told me a couple months ago, since I rejoined Sam's Club, a story that really resonated with me. She said, the first week they started with the business, they were looking for cash. They needed $3,000 to actually stock the shelves, and they didn't know where to go. So they turned to a friend of theirs, and they borrowed $3,000, right? Back in those days, $3,000 actually was enough to stock those shelves. And without that capital and the generosity of their friend, there was no way they could have continued with their business and be successful. So I will tell you personally, I really resonate with all the small businesses that are going through the challenges of needing customers as well as cash. For 30 years, Sam's Club has been serving small business. In fact, we serve about 30% of all small businesses in the United States. And 600,000 small businesses actually shop with us every single day. Can you imagine 600,000 customers? We're listening to their needs and challenges and their concerns every day. Last year, Sam's Club actually created a position at a senior VP level to find solutions for small businesses, and that's my organization. So we're looking for services that will actually enable you to connect, market your businesses, to enable your business to be more efficient, as well as save money and time. How would you like that, right? Sam's Club also launched what we call Supplier Diversity Summits. In fact, we had one a couple weeks ago, Carrie. And we bring minority suppliers, women-owned suppliers, as well as veteran-owned suppliers, and we give them exposure to our merchandising organization. And they bring quality products that are mostly made in the US, right? We love made in the US. And they get exposure to the buyers, so they get on the shelf or online at Sam's Club, and it's been working extremely well. We also have my colleagues here from our foundation, Susan Kohler, who runs the foundation, Julie Allen, who actually is the head of our showcase events, as well as Kristen Henry, and Ronnie Robinson and Sean Baldwin are here as well from our merchandising, and of course Andrew Waits, who tells us all about our insights on customers. And of course, Carrie works on our PR team, so we're happy to be here supporting the organization. I want to tell you a little bit about the showcase events. It's an opportunity for a local business to be in our clubs, especially for grand openings. So we have 3 actually I want to highlight in Kansas City area. One is called the 3 Dog Bakery. The other one was the Silver Craze by Kim Gibson. And of course, everyone should know Jack Stack Barbecue, right? We love Jack Stack Barbecue. The story goes that our buyers actually come to Kansas City quite a bit because this is the biggest city we have our competition in. So we do what we call comp shopping. And of course, we have to eat. So we eat at Jack Stack Barbecue. And they were actually brought in by the showcase events team to showcase their products in our club. It did so well, we expanded to all the clubs in Missouri and Kansas City area. And then the items that couldn't get on the shelf, we put it on samsclub.com. So we do tremendous business with them. We love local businesses. So we actually have our contingents here. So when you have the matchmaking sessions and you have items that you want to sell to Sam's Club, please go and see Julie and Kristen, okay? We know that change is very constant at Sam's Club, both in business and life. And we're here to actually provide cutting-edge solutions. This week, we're showcasing in Kansas City clubs. We didn't pick it because of the SBA event, but Kansas City clubs. And we're showcasing new technology, which is cutting-edge on POS system. Imagine a tablet, right? That does your inventory control, your payroll, your internet access, and that's available for you guys to see in all of our clubs this week, so go check it out. We're also involved with Gallup survey, and we just launched a micro business tracker with Gallup, and in April, we published our first results. And the findings weren't surprising to us because we knew the challenges of our customers, but there were some insights that we learned. Micro businesses are still at risk. Even though we went through the 2008 economic difficulties and things are better, small businesses are still struggling quite a bit. We found that most businesses started since 2008 has been more successful than before, but they're still investing a lot of their own money into their business. In fact, 70% of their time is being spent on operating their business, not growing their business. So they're working in the business, not on the business. They're also taking significant personal risks. 60% of them actually use their retirement fund or sold something they own, like their home or whatever, to invest back into the business. There is actually a bright spot, though. Nearly 55%, 60% of the micro entrepreneurs are very confident in their business plans to grow. And guess what? They're hiring more people than the big businesses in the United States. So our backbone of the economy is stronger than ever. As we look into this research, it's clear that retail industry can lift the awareness for easier access and affordable for cash. And customers need, our members need customers, right? And they need cash as well. We're working on both. So if you come to Sam's Club, probably sometime in September, you'll see breadth of services that we're going to launch to help you guys be more efficient. I want to talk a little bit about Sam's Club Giving Program because Susan Kohler is here. We're donating about $32 million over the next 5 years to empower small businesses, either in grants or through working with local organizations like the SCORE, Axion, and enabling and empowering the training so that they can actually know how to apply for loans, how to get access to capital, and how do they manage their business more efficiently. So it's something that we're passionate about. And in fact, this year, I was really excited that we donated $2.5 million to Women Entrepreneur Lend Initiative. And that's going to be a great program, Susan. I look forward to what we can do there. We touched over 4,000 micro small businesses through these grants. And look, think about next 5 years, what difference we can make as they grow their business. In conclusion, I think everything we do, because Sam's Club's in business for small business. Mr. Sam Walton founded Sam's Club 31 years ago because we wanted to help small businesses, right? So we're saving money and time. We want you to be more efficient. It is my hope that everything we do will lift up the awareness of the small businesses' needs, and so that you can save time, money, and energy. I would love to challenge the other corporations in the room to help us be there together, because small businesses' foundation has to be stronger for the economy as for the United States. Not only did $3,000 family loan help us get here, right? But it really enabled us to achieve the American dream that my dad had 35 years ago. And most of you are here because you do have a dream, right? And I just want to make sure that you guys know that Sam's Club is here for you. We have 6 Sam's Clubs around Kansas City area, and we're in business for small business. So we want to help you both save money, time, and energy. So thanks for having us here.
Thank you so much. And we want to thank our other co-sponsors who are on the back of our program: Sam's Club, Burns and McDonnell. We've got Microsoft, United States Postal Service, Dun & Bradstreet, ADT, Chase, Colonial Life, and YP. And I am ready to introduce our heroine, our new champion, our new administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, the newest cabinet member on the President's cabinet at the White House, and our administrator, Maria Contreras-Sweet, and she has been trying to get here for hours and hours and hours, and she finally arrived this morning at about 3 a.m. So you know she was really trying to get here. Let me tell you just a couple of things about our new 24th administrator. She's 5 weeks old. She's only been in this position for about 5 weeks, April the 7th, 2014. And prior to coming to Washington, D.C., she founded Pro-America Bank, the first Latino-formed commercial bank in California in more than 35 years. And as the bank's executive chairwoman, she focused on access to capital and counseling to small and mid-sized companies. We've got a big page of information about our new administrator, but she was a founding director of the California Endowment, a multi-billion-dollar philanthropic health foundation. She has been a small business owner, so she knows what you're all going through. She was born in Guadalajara, Mexico, and she is a first-generation immigrant who came to America at age 5 with her mother and 5 siblings. I cannot tell you how excited and how glad I am to introduce our administrator, Maria Contreras-Sweet. Would you please? She's making her grand entrance. We're so happy to have you in Kansas City. Thank you for all you have done trying to get here to be with us today. Our administrator.
What she is not telling you, our Pat Brown-Dixon, our regional administrator of the great SBA, thank you, is that she was up picking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's the interesting part. Congratulations to you. And she showed up with water and a great big smile, and she said, there is no way you're going to come into Kansas City and not have the SBA be your first face. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you so much. I can't tell you, I was not going to let anything. We were going to get on a motorcycle the next thing if that plane didn't take off. We're just so delighted to be here because we know all the great things that you're doing here in this town. And so thank you again to all of you for this gracious invitation to be with you and the very generous introduction. Thank you so much for all of that. I am just so happy that we are celebrating this week what we call National Small Business Week. I want to thank all of our friends at Burns & McDonnell for hosting us here in this beautiful, exquisite facility. Is this something special? Very nice. Thank you. And of course, I understand that I, again, just missed again my luck this morning to have missed Mayor James and Mayor Harland for their presence, for their support in getting this event to be what it's become, and for their generous presentation this morning. So thank you in absentia to them as well. I understand that we have an all-star lineup here of leaders in our program. You've heard from some of them already, and we've got more to go. But this is not just what we're doing here, it's what we're doing across the country. And so I wanted this to be a part of what we're doing across the country and have you connect with everybody else. We started in San Francisco. You may have heard yesterday, that's where we were coming from, and we started at Twitter headquarters. And so in order to make this a national event and have a national conversation, we started a new account for me, and that was a new Twitter account. So for those of you who are not familiar with Twitter, one of the things my children have taught me is that there are selfies. You know, you can take a picture of yourself with a group of people. So I want to get into the spirit and have all of our friends in Boston that we're going to be meeting with this week, all of our friends in DC, and those folks that are out in California still tracking us, be a part of what we're doing here today. So I'm going to do a little selfie with you. We're going to take a picture and have you be a part of the national conversation. So please indulge me while I take my picture. All right, let's do this. Yes, everyone's going to smile here. We're going to do this. I love it. There we go. There we go. Now everybody's going to get that picture. I want to recognize Tom and Henry Block of H&R Block, of course, Son Hom of Sam's Club, and Kansas City Chiefs legend Eddie Kennison for sharing their wisdom. Are they, any of them here in the room today, right now? Yeah, oh, there you are. Thank you, big star. Thank you so much. Yesterday, as I said, we kicked off the National Small Business Headquarters event, and it was just terrific to hear the stories, and I hear that these are going to take on those stories in San Francisco, that your stories are just a beat all. To have somebody of your stature, to have the Block family tell their story, and to have this successful architectural exquisite firm host us in this great site. Thank you for convening such powerful folks. But whether you have started a business to provide for your family, to satisfy an unfulfilled passion, or because you want to start a second act and be your own boss, you're strengthening America. Today we commit to growing small businesses so we can fulfill the promise of America. We're delighted to be here in the Heartland for day 2 of the National Small Business Week, as we focus on the risk takers who make the wheels of our economy turn. The high-tech businesses we featured in Silicon Valley, they are important to our country. There is no question about that. But so are the farms, the ranches, the mills, the manufacturing plants, the transportation companies, the mom-and-pop neighborhood businesses that are the lifeblood of so many of our Midwestern economies and communities. America's 28 million small businesses create, listen to this powerful data, America's 28 million small businesses create nearly 2 out of every 3 jobs in our economy, employing 1/2 of our nation's private sector workforce. So clearly, you can't have a conversation about creating jobs and economic growth without talking about how to support our entrepreneurs. President Obama issued a proclamation this week declaring it National Small Business Week. In his proclamation, he said, "Small businesses represent an ideal at the heart of our nation's promise that with ingenuity and hard work, anyone can build a better life." President Obama passed 18 direct tax breaks into laws for American small businesses. I agree with him. We have more to do. We have to continue to protect tax breaks and tax credits that help small businesses hire and add incentives for paying workers higher wages. We must ensure that all entrepreneurs have the resources to take their business to the next level, or even though not everybody is readily and richly endowed. Because if we create a more level playing field, the best ideas will rise to the top, opportunity will flourish, and America can prosper. I will never stop fighting for small businesses in this country, because I am one. For me, the chance to serve in the President's cabinet as a champion for small businesses is the opportunity of a lifetime. I immigrated, as was mentioned by Pat, from Guadalajara, Mexico at the age of 5 with my mother and 5 siblings. And my mother said, "You must work hard, stay focused, and when you advance, bring others along. It's not the titles that you have. It's what you do with the titles that you have that will help you serve that country well." Well, we didn't have much when we arrived, but what we did have was truly an abundance of hope. I didn't speak a word of English. My family didn't speak a word of English. And we certainly didn't speak the language of business. But my grandmother taught us to believe in the promise of America. She told me that if I worked really, really hard and played by the rules, that although our family had been a family of migrant workers, that someday I might be able to hold office and maybe even be a secretary. So fortunately, the good Lord listened to my grandmother's prayers, and the governor of California rewarded me by making me California's Secretary of Business, of Transportation, of Housing, and now I do hold office in the seat at the President's cabinet, only in America. The American dream has always been about the opportunity to earn a good education and the keys to own your home. But expanding the American dream is also about the opportunity to start your own business. As we celebrate National Small Business Week, I want every business owner across this country to get to know your SBA. We want to be your partner. When I was going through confirmation, bracing bracing for what might be. You know, you've heard about the bipartisanship that takes place. What I really, really appreciated was that from both sides of the aisle, they said the federal government doesn't always get everything right, but one of the best things that the federal government does is the SBA, and I'm really proud now to be at the helm of that agency. But I know that it's not about me. I know that it's because you as entrepreneurs are using our resources to grow your businesses to the next level. The SBA is the best kind of partner, a silent partner that takes 0%. Our payoff for us is to help you build a successful business that creates jobs and put Americans back to work. So if you're a small business owner, the SBA helps you get capital on good terms to start or grow your business. So 1 is capital. 2, we counsel you about how to get your business plan in shape and how to take your opportunity to the next level. 3, we do matchmaking so you can land contracts, government contracts, corporate contracts, or international contracts. So we call it the 3 C's: capital, counseling, and contracts. Those 3 C's benefit every business. If you have a small business or you want to start one, the SBA exists just to help you succeed. I hope that you'll join us, that you'll go to sba.gov, that you'll click on the local assistance button to learn about more about the services that we provide. I started my own family business more than 20 years ago. I left a good, safe corporate job in Los Angeles to start my own firm so that my family could have something. It was both exhilarating but terrifying. The entrepreneurs out there know the feeling that I'm describing. The first thing that I remember is that I needed a business card just to go out and start doing my marketing. But that meant, as soon as you have a business card, what do you need? You need an office number, you need an address, you need a fax number. Well, that all meant that I needed to price all of that out. And just like that, I had my first crash course on why new small businesses need access to capital. In those early years, I worked a lot of late nights. I spent most of the daylight hours marketing the business, which meant that the evenings and sometimes into the nights were assigned to doing the actual work that I was able to obtain. I wish that I knew then what I've learned now. The SBA specializes in helping entrepreneurs with business planning and strategic networking. We open doors to customers in the public sector, in the corporate supply chains, even to foreign buyers halfway around the world. I know some of you are saying, okay, she's giving me a talk, but I don't know that I believe that this is really the case. Let me just share. On the first one, on capital, the SBA has supported more loans to our small businesses than in the last 5 years, than at any other time in our history. Our loan volume has totaled $146 billion since President Obama took office. That's more than the total GDP of many countries like Hungary or Vietnam. On the second C, the counseling, we provide mentorship, counseling, strategic advice to more than 1 million small business owners every year. We have hundreds of small business development centers, women business centers, veterans outreach centers, and our very own, the SBA district offices. Our seasoned business executives with SCORE operate out of 800 locations in communities across every state in America. They log more than 1 million hours every year. They give back and offer their knowledge and experience. They do one-on-one counseling, or in some instances, they'll come right to your place of business. But wherever you meet with your SCORE or your counseling center or your district office, one thing remains the same. All their services are free to you. On the third C, on contracts, we oversee the federal government supply chain for small businesses. The U.S. government is the largest buyer in the world, purchasing over $400 billion of goods and services every year. The SBA oversees that process, Now, some people have a wealthy uncle or an uncle that's connected. You have Uncle Sam. From small firms that enter large corporate supply chains, we can help those small businesses that enter the corporate or the government supply chain, the procurement process. We have learned that they increase their revenue by an average of 250%. What are we waiting for? The SBA can also help you, again, as I said, into global opportunities. Last year, we counseled more than 15,000 entrepreneurs interested in exporting, and we shattered our record for export finance, supporting $3 billion in lending. Just think about that. 95%, I want to repeat this, 95% of consumers live outside of this country's borders, but only 1% of small businesses are selling to them today. That is an untapped market. There's so much growth potential in our interconnected global economy, and we've lowered the threshold with the advent of technology. So if you need capital to grow, you need counseling to plan, or you need contracts to expand your portfolio, then please look up your local SBA office. It doesn't matter if you're running a restaurant, a plant, a farm, or the next big thing in high tech. The SBA is here for you. In that regard, I'm always blessed to have wonderful signs of affirmation. And if my husband were here, he would tell you that my name you heard is Maria Contreras Sweet, and my husband, Ray Sweet, says he's the one who made me sweet. But my mother used to call me Maria, quite Contreras, right? So we have a lot of fun with my name. But the point is that anytime you receive affirmation, as my grandmother said, we have to be generous and give it back to the people, like my family, who have helped to get me here. And my new family, may I please just introduce you and ask the people of the SBA to please stand and say hello. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So thank you to this community for indulging us, for allowing us to be your partners, and hopefully that you'll think of, when you think of angel financing, that you'll think of the angels at the SBA. So let's keep the conversation going. I hope that you will join us on hashtag SBW 2014 so that we can continue the conversation across the country. And let's remember to buy small, buy local, to support our local businesses. Thank you. No question, I admire the large institutions that have always been the leaders of innovation. But today, more and more, we are over-indexing. Our innovation is coming out of small businesses. So let's come together. Let's commit anew today that we were going to grow your business, that we're going to grow Kansas City, that we're going to make it what everybody intended to make it here as part of I understand that you're mayors, I understand that your chamber, I understand that here the leaders of this wonderful architectural firm and of the Kauffman Foundation, that you all came together and you made a commitment to make this the most entrepreneurial city in the country. Let's get to do that work, and let's do it by working together. God bless you, God bless America, and let's keep this economy going. Thank you for letting me a part of your business.
So wow. Good. I can't work with the new administrator. Okay. Now, our next speaker is someone that you may have seen out at the Arrowhead Stadium. You may have seen him on television and live streaming. We're still live streaming from Kansas City. That's where Arrowhead Stadium is, those that are you. He played football for the Kansas City Chiefs. Woo! But few of you know that in this community, that he chose to come back to Kansas City and make that his home. And he also decided to be a small business owner in the Kansas City area and to create jobs. So our next speaker, Eddie Kennison, and I'm not going to tell you too much about him because I don't know what he's going to say about himself. And I believe he has his beautiful wife here with him today. So Eddie Kennison with...
Wow, Miss Pat, I need your energy. After being up since 3 a.m. this morning and still having that energy, that's pretty awesome. Well, thank you all for allowing me to be here this morning. And Mr. Block, if you're still in the building and you refer to customers or your business, if I go back to 1955 and find one of those ads for $5, would you still do my tax returns for $5? Ms. Pat, thank you for that gracious introduction. Like I said, it's an honor to be with you today. I can't stand before you and not acknowledge my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because without him, I wouldn't be here. Yes, thank you. A few other people I would like to acknowledge. I have my wife and I, we have a 16-year-old son. His name is Carrington. He's a junior at Rockhurst High School. Have Josiah, our 12-year-old. He's a 7th grader at Prairie Star Middle School. And my wife and I, after I retired, we decided to have a little bit more fun, and now we have a 10-month-old, Griffin. Yes. So, and we have our cute little King Charles Spaniel, Sophie. I can never forget her because she's so precious, and she's been with us for a while. To all of our men and women who are serving overseas, and to our veterans, thank you for the service that you put in and you continue to put in. Yes, thank you. And do we have any men and women that are in the room today that are veterans or that are currently serving? If you are, would you please stand and let everyone see who you are and give them a big round of applause for protecting our country. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, my adorable, my friend, my best friend. And it's tough. And you guys will see me get emotional because I love her dearly. And I'll tell you a story on why I love her so dearly at some point. She's my rock. She has been my girl for 18 years. And that's tough to say for a professional athlete in a National Football League. Ladies and gentlemen, my wife, Shamika Kennison. Yes. I know a lot of you know about the football player, Eddie Kennison, but I'm here to speak to you today about the small business owner here in Kansas City, our wonderful city of Kansas City. I have a personal mission. Eddie Kennison has a personal mission, and it had to start even before I got into the entrepreneurial realm or the small business realm. And my mission statement simply says, a man is measured by how hard he works when no one is watching. And a lot of people, you know, they want to stand in front of the crowd and they can jump and cheer and do all of those things in front of one person or many people. But when no one's around, what are you doing to help your life be successful and your business be successful? Are you still putting in the hard work? That's my personal statement. I have a cheese philosophy, and I'll refer to a lot of things because I like to read a lot of books. I like to read a lot of biographies. And I like reading what people have to say in general about themselves and about business. This is a Kansas City Chiefs philosophy, something that I picked up when I became a Kansas City Chiefs in 2001. It says, you are what you do daily. You first form your habits, then your habits form you. Whether you are becoming better or worse depends on what you do. And that's the Chief's philosophy. I ask each and every one of you, how many of you have a personal mission statement? Personal. Yes. I know a lot of us have business mission statements, but I think before you start a business or before you jump into business, or even now if you have a business, I think you ought to have a personal mission statement, because now you can step outside those doors with a mission to accomplish a mission. So I encourage you, if you don't have one today, at some point, find your personal mission statement, write it down, put it in your shoe, put it in your sock, put it in your jacket pocket, your purse, but carry it with you and let people know what your mission statement is. There's a few things I like to share about my personal life that I've transformed into business life that I had in football. And some of it may not sound so elegant, some of it may not be what a lot of people want to hear, but it's what I believe and I know to be true on a daily basis. And one, a lot of people don't want to hear about it, don't want to see it, but think about diet and exercise. Think about the things that we put inside our body. And I had to be very conscious of this when I played the game of football. I just couldn't go to the local restaurant and put anything into my body. I needed the fuel to be able to compete every single day, not just Sunday, but we had practices throughout the week. And I had to fuel my body with the right things. I had to exercise to make sure that I can keep up with what I thought my competition was doing, and I try to do better. And my wife, she thinks I'm a little crazy now, because even to this day, I get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning while the house is completely quiet, and I get up and I go in my basement and I get a workout in. And my mother-in-law said to me this morning, she said, I've never seen a 41-year-old guy with so much energy. And it's just because what I choose to do and the things that I've carried over from being a football player into my afterlife, or to my new life of being a small business owner and a person retired from the Kansas City Chief. So I encourage each and every one of you to go out and look at diet and exercise and really jump into it, because I promise you, you will have a lot more energy with the things that you do on a day-to-day basis. If you're married, and I'll get into why I'm saying these things a little bit later, but if you're married and things are kind of shaky at home, try to figure out how to make those things clean and make them straight at home, because how hard is it for you to focus when you're at work when your home is not taken care of first? So I encourage you, if anything's going on at home, any brother, sister, wife, doesn't matter, fix those things, because I promise you to help your business life, because you have a clean slate, your mind will be clear to focus on the things when you're away from home. So I challenge you guys to fix those things that are potentially broken in your life. I'll give you guys a few examples about how I got to where I am today. My father was a military guy and a mailman. My father was in the Desert Storm, and he was in Vietnam. So my father was never at home. I was basically raised by a single mother. And I used to do a lot of things that you shouldn't do. And you guys have probably heard it before, and many of you have probably done a lot of things that you shouldn't have done, but that's just part of life. And even when I got married, I continued to do a lot of those things. You know, God blessed me with, this ability to play football, and he also, gave a team an opportunity to give Eddie Kennison a lot of money. And we heard earlier Mr. Block say it wasn't about the money, it's about what he was enjoyed doing. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I never had anything growing up. When I was in college, I called my mother one weekend for $20 to go hang out with the friends, and my mom asked me, was I crazy? She was a maid at a local hotel in our home of Lake Charles, Louisiana. So when I was finally drafted, when the Rams, and I'll share with you guys my signing bonus that I got in 1996 when I was drafted, they gave me a $2 million signing bonus. And for a kid that couldn't buy a pair of, Chuck Taylors, And we all know how, Chuck Taylors, how far they've come along. I couldn't afford a pair of Chuck Taylors. Well, when the Rams had given me my signing bonus, I went out and did everything that I ever wanted to do. I bought like 40 pair of Chuck Taylors. I bought my mother a house. I bought my father a house. I bought my mother a car. I bought my little brother a car. Gave my big brother, I think I gave him like $40,000 to. So, and beyond that, I had friends. And you guys have heard these stories before, right? And I had a lot of friends. And we used to go places and we used to have fun. And when I was married, those things kind of continued. And this is where the rock and the backbone. My wife, she grew up in the church. Her father was a deacon at a church at home, so she was a good, clean girl. And then there was this guy that come into her life that was running rampant and running wild, and her grandmother had actually said, there is no way that boy, that's what she said, that boy will come into your life and be a part of your life. And for whatever odd reason, she saw my heart more than anything, more than glamour, more than money, more than anything. And she saw that. And I tell you what, I took my wife through New Orleans, I took her through Chicago, I took her through Denver, I took her through St. Louis, and all of those places are places that I played. And we finally made it to Kansas City, and, well, I'll back up. Before we made it to Kansas City, we were in Denver, and my wife, she was 6 months pregnant with our now 12-year-old. Our oldest son, Carrington, was 3 at the time, and I got home one afternoon from football practice, and my wife, she was laying on the floor with our 3-year-old, just kind of draped over. And I walked in, I was like, this is kind of weird that, my wife, she decided to sleep in the middle of the floor. Well, come to find out, she was unconscious. And we had gotten into the hospital, and for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and part of the day Monday, she was unconscious. And the doctor said they really couldn't do anything because they didn't know what happened. The only thing they can do is monitor the baby that was in her belly. Well, Saturday, we had to play a game against the San Diego Chargers. And I decided that Saturday that I wasn't going to play the game because my focus was my son, my wife, and our unborn son. And I decided not to play. And a lot of people in the National Football League wouldn't have taken the stand to not play. They would have went on and they would have played, and that would have been it. But on Monday, the team decided that they were going to release me from the team because I decided to go be with my wife in the hospital. And that I know now that it was a blessing in disguise because we were able to get home to our home in Houston and find out what really happened in her life. And at that point in time, we found out that she was diagnosed with the disease lupus. And if any of you guys know what lupus is, it's an autoimmune disease that eats away at all of the vital organs in your body. And it's something that's uncurable, but that's such as life. And I did not let her feel sorry for herself. She didn't let me feel sorry for myself. We just figured out, we was like, okay, this is what it is. We're going to keep moving forward. And from that point, our 6-month-old son was born. A couple months later, he's 12 years old now, and I tell you what, this kid has the most energy you could possibly imagine. Oh, I think this kid, he runs in his sleep. You see him sleeping, he just, it's unreal, but we love him dearly. And from that point, we started our foundation, Quick Start, the Eddie Kennison Foundation. And if you guys ever want to visit, it's EddieKennisonFoundation.com. And from that point of starting Quick Start, the Eddie Kennison Foundation, we partnered with ALR. It's called the Alliance for Lupus Research, and I'll give you a short story on the Alliance for Lupus Research. Mr. Woody Johnson, the owner of the New York Jets, started the Alliance for Lupus Research, or ALR. And if you guys can remember Herm Edwards quitting the New York Jets and coming to Kansas City to be the head coach in 2006, well, the National Football League scheduled this game, the very first game of the season, the Kansas City Chiefs against the New York Jets. And I had read about Mr. Johnson's involvement with ALR and starting the ALR project. And I was in the middle of warm-ups, and I tell you, when opportunity presents itself, ladies and gentlemen, don't be afraid to go after it. Don't be afraid. I was warming up, you know, and Mr. Johnson, I saw him standing in the tunnel at Arrowhead Stadium, and I said, what's the best time? It's right now. So I ran over to Mr. Johnson, and I said, I heard about ALR. I've started Quick Start the Eddie Kennison Foundation. I'd like to talk to you more about what you're doing. And Mr. Johnson, he was like, Eddie, I tell you what. He said, on Wednesday, be looking for a letter from me, and we can talk, you know, from that point on. How many of you guys heard, you know, when someone say, oh, yeah, I'll contact you, I'll send you an email, and they never do? Well, that was my impression. I was like, Mr. Johnson's not going to write me a letter. But sure enough, on Wednesday, because I ran up to him and asked him to be a part of his organization, he sent me a letter. And to this day, Quick Start, the Eddie Kennison Foundation, and the Alliance for Lupus Research have merged companies to be this company to find awareness for lupus and raise money for lupus research. Over the last decade, we've helped raise $90 million for lupus research. Yes. And that's where my love for helping nonprofit organizations, children, and other people with needs in our wonderful community, Kansas City. We all understand that some people or businesses need money more than others. We get that. And I try to remember that as well. And since Shamika's diagnosis of lupus, and after her subsequent remission, I have adopted a slogan that I've tried to live by on a day-to-day basis. And that slogan is, when was the last time you did something for someone else so that person will have a chance to succeed? Think about that. John C. Maxwell states, don't do easy things first, or hard things first, or urgent things first. Do first things first. In my humble opinion, this activity will give you the highest return. That's John C. Maxwell. How I got to Kansas City, during Shamika and I time at home in Houston when we were trying to figure out what was going on with her, I had gotten a phone call from Dick Vermeil in 2001. And this is the first time that I'd heard from any National League football team in a 3-week period at any time. And I honestly thought that I wasn't going to play football again. So, and I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do at that point in time. I was not raised in a home that was business oriented. I was not raised in a home where finances were the ultimate talk at dinner. I didn't know how to balance a checkbook. I didn't know anything about a banking account other than what my agent had told me when I first got my signing bonus. And Coach Vermeil called me on a Thursday evening. They were getting ready to play the Philadelphia Eagles on a Thursday night. And Coach Vermeil called me and he said, Eddie, do you still want to play football? I said, Coach, I never stopped wanting to play football. You know, so my hopes were getting high and I was getting excited about playing football again. He said, well, I'm going to call you after the game. You talk to Shamika. Well, at the time he called her Shima. Well, you talk to Shima and you know, I'll call you after the game and you guys let me know what you're going to do. So sure enough, an hour after the Chiefs played the Philadelphia Eagles, Coach Vermeil called me and I said, yep, Coach. My wife, she agreed, and I want to play football. He said, I'm going to fly you into Kansas City on tomorrow, which was Friday. And on that Friday, I landed in Kansas City, and Kansas City became our permanent home. We've been here 12 years since that time in Kansas City, yes. And I know I only have a couple more minutes, boy, but I have a whole lot to share, so I'll try to go through this fast. Miss Pat? Don't fuss at me. Okay, I'll cut it short, way short. I've learned firsthand what the Missouri meaning of buck was. And after I retired, the buck really stopped with me. What am I going to do after football? It wasn't about the National Football League anymore. It wasn't about management, the GMs, or anything like that. It wasn't about my teammates. At that point in time, it was about starting a small business, understanding what small business is all about. My new team that I had, they were a lot smaller. Responsibilities were a lot different. You know, when the floor needed mopping, I had to mop the floors. When the bathroom needed cleaning, I had to go in and get the old scrubber for the toilet. I had to go scrub the toilet. That was new for me. It was new. But it's something that I had to adopt and I knew I had to do as a small business owner so our employees can say or see me doing those things, because if I asked them to do it, I didn't want them to look at me and say, yeah, you would never do it, so why do I have to do it? So, and I still do those things to this day. Ladies and gentlemen, we all have a legacy in our life. What will people say about you when your day is complete here on earth? Because it will happen. It's inevitable. What was your impact on the people that you surround yourself with? What will they say about you on that day when they stand at a podium and talk about your life? I hear this from our pastor all the time. Live your life in such a way where God can't say no. What will they say? Ladies and gentlemen, if you do me a favor, and this is something I love to do, if we can all rise, and the person that's next to you, would you please lock arms with that person that's next to you? This is for your marriage. This is for your life. This is for your job. This is for your relationships with other people. And small businesses in Kansas City need to lock arms, be strong with help with each other. The SB has shown tremendous help over the years. Mrs. Sweet, she gave you some examples. And I'd like to share this with you from The Purpose-Driven Life, a book that I absolutely love to read. It said, at some point in your life, you must decide whether you want to impress people or influence people. You can impress people from a distance, but you must get close to them to influence them. And when you do that, they will be able to see your flaws. That's okay. The most essential quality for leadership is not perfection, but credibility. People must be able to trust you or they won't follow you. How do you build credibility? Not pretending to be perfect, but by being honest. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I wish you the utmost success in your business. And with my slogan, I don't know if I can do this or not, but I'm going to put it out there. With my slogan, when was the last time you've done something great for someone else so that person will have a chance to succeed? And my wife don't know I'm doing this. Right, that's why she's my backbone. There's a small business owner that's in here today. And Ms. Pat, I love to work with you on this, but we would like to offer a $25,000 investor for a small business that's happening right now, and I don't know how we can do that. But if there is, and if you guys are interested, you guys can email me at eddiekinnison@barrel87.com, BARREL 87.com. And when those emails start coming in, Ms. Pat, I'll converse with you, and some small business owner will get $25,000 as my wife and I to be investors in your business.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. Did you notice that I was speechless? For the first time all day? You did notice that? Okay, wow. That's a pretty wonderful way to end the morning. Wow. And lunch is outside and in here, and we're going to have matchmaking. We've got buyers up in CB, where is that? CB 280. We've got making Kansas City an international trading hub. That's exporting. Remember, our administrator said 95% of our population of our customers are outside of the United States. And are you bankable? That's going to be right here in this auditorium at 1 p.m. And panel number 2, the exporting, is going to be in 9400 auditorium. We've got some SBA people that will lead you to that location. Matchmaking begins at 1. Then we have other panels beginning at 2:15, contracting with the federal government. From small to big, the dynamics of growing your business right here in this auditorium. We've got the Bean Baron, that is Danny O'Neill with the Roastery, and we've also got Gary Walker with Magic Touch. I call him the Jolly Green Giant. Okay, everybody, are we gonna be here for the rest of the day and take advantage of all of these panels? Yes. Are we going to thank Burns and Mac and Greg Graves for this wonderful venue and for being a national sponsor, and Sam's Club and all the rest of our 9 sponsors? This has been a wonderful day. Please eat and stay. How about that? I'm a poet and didn't know it.